Good evening, dear friend. Before tonight's story begins, allow yourself to settle into a comfortable place. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing become slow and steady. There is nowhere to hurry, nothing to solve, and nothing waiting for you beyond this quiet moment. Together, we will visit a peaceful little town in New England where every day unfolds gently and every page turned carries the comforting rhythm of a simpler time. Tonight, our journey begins in the small village of Willow Creek. Long before the first shopkeeper unlocks a door, before the baker warms his oven, and before the church bell quietly greets the morning, the village rests beneath a soft blanket of pale blue dawn. A light mist hangs above the narrow streets. The maple trees stand perfectly still. Tiny drops of dew rest upon every blade of grass. Even the birds seem content to wait another few peaceful moments before filling the air with song. At the very end of Willow Street stands a building that has watched generations come and go. It is neither the tallest building nor the grandest. Its bricks have faded after many long winters. Its wooden steps have been polished smooth by thousands of gentle footsteps. Above the front door hangs a simple carved sign, Willow Creek Public Library. The sign swings ever so slightly in the cool morning breeze. Inside, the library remains wrapped in quiet darkness. Rows upon rows of books rest patiently on sturdy oak shelves. Leather-bound volumes, worn poetry collections, old travel journals, history books whose pages have yellowed with age. Small novels that have been borrowed so many times their cloth covers have become wonderfully soft beneath careful hands. Nothing moves. Nothing stirs. Only the old grandfather clock in the entrance hall continues its faithful work. Tick. Pause. Tick. Pause. Its steady rhythm has echoed through these rooms for nearly 80 years. If walls could remember voices, these walls would remember thousands. Children discovering their very first stories. Parents searching for recipes. Farmers reading weather reports. Teachers gathering maps. Travelers finding inspiration. Neighbors quietly sharing recommendations. All of those moments have settled into the wooden beams like warm afternoon sunlight. And now another peaceful day is ready to begin. Just as the eastern sky begins to glow with hints of soft gold, gentle footsteps approach along the stone pathway. Measured, unhurried, familiar. Each step sounds almost as though it has followed the exact same path for decades. The footsteps belong to Elias Turner. He is 68 years old. His silver hair peeks beneath a neatly worn brown wool cap. A thick navy coat keeps away the cool morning air. Around his neck rests a simple knitted scarf, one carefully mended many winters ago. In one hand, he carries an old leather satchel. In the other, a polished brass key. Every weekday morning, without fail, Elias arrives before sunrise. Not because anyone asks him to, not because anyone keeps track, simply because the library has become part of the rhythm of his own life. He pauses at the bottom step for just a moment. The morning air feels cool against his face. He looks upward. The clouds drift slowly across the brightening sky. A pair of robins land upon the fence nearby. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster welcomes the new day. Elias smiles softly. Not a wide smile, just the quiet smile of someone greeting an old friend. He climbs the wooden steps, one careful step at a time. Each board answers with a gentle creak, not a complaint, almost a greeting, as though the building itself recognizes him. At the heavy oak door, Elias removes the brass key from his coat pocket. The key is old, older than many of the books inside. Its edges have become smooth after countless mornings. He fits it carefully into the lock. A gentle click. The handle turns. The large wooden door opens with its familiar whisper. Cool air drifts out from the sleeping library. It carries the unmistakable scent of aged paper, polished wood, dry pine shelves, a faint trace of yesterday's fireplace. For Elias, it is the most comforting fragrance in the world. He steps inside, then quietly closes the door behind him. For a few moments, he simply stands. He never rushes this part. The silence deserves appreciation. Morning light slips through the tall front windows. Thin beams of gold slowly stretch across the wooden floor. Dust floats gently within those rays of sunlight. Tiny sparkling particles drift so slowly they almost seem suspended in time. The library feels alive, not with noise, but with stillness. Elias removes his hat. He hangs his coat carefully upon the familiar wooden hook near the entrance. His satchel rests beside the front desk. Then, almost without thinking, he walks to the grandfather clock. He listens. Tick. Pause. Tick. Perfect. The clock has kept faithful time through snowstorms, spring rains, summer afternoons, and quiet autumn evenings. Satisfied, Elias gently winds the clock using its polished brass key. The mechanism responds with a soft series of tiny clicks. The pendulum never misses a beat. Across the reading room stand 6 tall windows. Each one faces east. Every morning, they welcome the sunrise before any other room in the building. Elias walks slowly from one window to the next. He unlatches each brass lock. One by one, the windows open a few careful inches. Fresh morning air quietly enters. It carries the scent of pine trees, wildflowers, fresh earth, and distant rain that fell sometime during the night. The curtains move almost imperceptibly, just enough to remind the books that another beautiful day has arrived. Outside, Willow Creek is beginning to awaken. A milk wagon rolls gently along the road. Its wooden wheels hum softly over the packed earth. Farther away, someone sweeps a front porch. A dog stretches lazily beneath the maple tree. The village wakes without hurry, without urgency. Everything follows its own peaceful rhythm. Elias watches for another quiet moment. Then he returns to the center of the library. Soon there will be books to dust, letters to organize, a kettle to warm, shelves to straighten. But for now, none of those tasks matter. The library, like the morning itself, deserves a few extra moments of stillness before the day gently unfolds. And as the golden light slowly fills every corner of the room, Willow Creek Public Library takes its first quiet breath of another beautiful day. Morning continued to unfold with the same quiet patience that seemed to live within every corner of Willow Creek. Outside, the sun had climbed only a little higher above the distant hills. Its gentle light filtered through the tall maple trees that lined Willow Street, painting delicate patterns across the library's front steps. Inside, the building remained wrapped in a peaceful silence. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. There was something wonderfully comforting about a sound that never hurried. Elias Turner believed every old library had its own heartbeat. For Willow Creek Public Library, that heartbeat was not loud. It was found in quiet footsteps across polished oak floors, in the soft turning of well-loved pages, in the gentle sigh of wooden shelves settling with the changing weather, and perhaps most of all, in the tiny drifting specks of dust that danced through the morning sunlight. Many people thought dust was something to remove as quickly as possible. Elias had never seen it that way. To him, dust simply meant that time had passed peacefully. It reminded him that books had rested quietly through the night, waiting for another day to be opened, read, and carefully returned. He walked toward the small storage closet tucked beside the history section. The old wooden door opened with a familiar creak. Inside hung a simple feather duster, its handle polished smooth after many years of faithful use. Beside it rested a soft cotton cloth folded neatly. A small tin of wood polish stood upon the lowest shelf. Everything had its place. Everything waited patiently. Elias picked up the feather duster with the same care someone else might use when lifting a treasured photograph. Its feathers were gray now, though they had once been bright and full. Time had softened them, just as it softened almost everything in Willow Creek. He smiled gently. Then he began his morning walk between the shelves. The fiction section came first. Long rows of sturdy oak bookcases stretched quietly from one end of the room to the other. Their shelves were filled with novels that had traveled through many hands across many decades. Some books wore bright cloth covers faded by sunlight. Others carried leather bindings gently cracked with age. Each one seemed perfectly content to wait. Elias lifted the feather duster. One slow motion. Another. Soft clouds of dust floated upward, glowing like tiny stars in the beams of morning light. He never rushed. There was no reason to. Every shelf deserved the same patient attention. As he moved along the rows, his fingertips occasionally rested upon the spine of a familiar book. Some titles had greeted him every morning for more than 30 years. Without opening them, he remembered their stories. Not every detail, only the feeling each one left behind. A peaceful farmhouse, a quiet journey by train, a family gathered beside a winter fireplace. simple stories for simple days. The books seemed almost like old neighbors, reliable, gentle, always waiting with quiet kindness. Near the center aisle stood a rolling wooden ladder. Its small brass wheels whispered softly across the floor as Elias guided it toward the tallest shelves. The upper shelves held books that visitors borrowed only occasionally. Large atlases, old collections of poetry, local history journals carefully bound by hand. He climbed slowly, one careful step, then another. The library seemed different from above. Sunlight stretched farther than before. Rows of books formed neat lines that disappeared into peaceful shadows. From here, the reading tables looked almost like tiny islands resting upon a sea of polished wood. He paused for a moment, not because he was tired, simply because the view had always made him smile. Outside the eastern windows, two bluebirds landed upon a cedar fence. Neither bird seemed in any hurry to fly away. They simply rested together beneath the warming sun. Elias watched them for a few quiet breaths before returning to his work. Dust drifted away almost silently. Each gentle sweep revealed the rich color of the oak beneath. The shelves carried hundreds of tiny scratches collected across generations. None of them spoiled the wood. Instead, they told the story of careful hands. Children reaching for adventure, teachers searching for knowledge, grandparents borrowing favorite novels once again. Every mark belonged there. Every mark had earned its place. By mid-morning, the first rays of sunshine had reached the center of the library. Golden light settled across the reading tables like a warm blanket. The room felt brighter now, not louder, only brighter. A kettle rested quietly near the small iron stove near the back office. Soon, Elias would warm water for his morning tea. But there was still another row of shelves waiting patiently. He moved toward the local history section. These books were among his favorites. Many had been written by people who had once walked these very streets. Farmers, teachers, doctors, carpenters, women who had carefully recorded recipes, weather journals, and family memories. The pages carried more than words. They carried the gentle rhythm of ordinary American lives. Lives filled with harvest seasons, snowy winters, church socials, railroad arrivals, summer picnics beneath great elm trees. Nothing grand, nothing dramatic, only the quiet beauty of everyday life. Elias brushed another shelf clean. A single pressed maple leaf slipped gently from the pages of an old journal. Its deep red color had faded into soft shades of amber and gold. Carefully, he picked it up. For a long moment, he simply admired it. Someone, many years before, had paused during an autumn afternoon. Perhaps they had walked beneath these same trees. Perhaps they had found this beautiful leaf resting upon the ground. Perhaps they had smiled before placing it inside the book, never imagining that decades later, another quiet pair of hands would discover it once again. Elias placed the leaf carefully between two clean sheets of archival paper. Nothing needed to be rushed. Small treasures deserved gentle care. The morning continued. The dust slowly disappeared. The books seemed to shine a little brighter beneath the soft sunlight. And somewhere outside, the bells of Willow Creek Church quietly rang 10 peaceful notes, drifting through the open windows before dissolving into the calm air of another beautiful day. The library, like its faithful librarian, continued to greet the morning one quiet shelf at a time. By the time the morning had settled comfortably over Willow Creek, the library had become brighter in the gentlest possible way. The first warm rays of sunlight stretched through the eastern windows, slowly making their way across the polished wooden floor. Outside, the village continued its quiet routine. A wagon rolled softly along the main road. Somewhere in the distance, a blacksmith began his day's work with slow, measured taps that drifted through the cool morning air like echoes from far away. Inside the library, however, another kind of quiet waited. Beyond the tall bookshelves and just past the history section was a small room that many visitors considered the heart of the building. It was known simply as the Little Reading Room. The room was not large. In fact, only 4 comfortable chairs stood inside. A round oak table rested at the center. 3 tall windows looked toward a peaceful garden where wildflowers bloomed during spring and summer. Along one wall stood a modest fireplace built from local stone. Above the mantel rested a simple brass clock whose hands moved almost silently. The room asked for nothing. It simply welcomed anyone who entered. Elias Turner always visited the Little Reading Room before the first visitor arrived, not because it required much attention, but because he believed every peaceful place deserved to be greeted each morning. He stepped quietly through the doorway. The wooden floor answered with its familiar, gentle creak. Sunlight rested across one empty chair, warming the faded blue cushion that had become soft after many years of quiet afternoons. Elias smiled. He reached toward the curtains and carefully tied them open with narrow cotton ribbons. At once, fresh morning light poured gently into the room. Outside, the garden looked wonderfully still. Tiny white daisies nodded beneath the breeze. Blue cornflowers swayed almost too slowly to notice. Butterflies drifted from flower to flower without any destination beyond the next blossom. The garden seemed to understand the library. Neither place hurried through the day. Upon the round table rested several books that visitors had returned the evening before. Elias gathered them one by one. A collection of New England poems, a small volume describing native birds, a cookbook carefully stained by many happy kitchens, a worn novel whose corners had softened after countless readings. He brushed each cover lightly with a clean cloth before carrying them back to their proper shelves. Books, he often thought, enjoyed returning home. Near the fireplace stood a comfortable rocking chair. Its oak frame had darkened over the decades. The woven seat had been repaired more than once. Although many newer chairs existed elsewhere in the building, visitors almost always chose this one. Perhaps it was the gentle rhythm of its movement. Perhaps it was the warmth of the fireplace during winter. Or perhaps it simply remembered everyone who had ever rested there. Elias placed one hand upon its smooth wooden arm. Very gently, he gave it the slightest push. The chair rocked once, then twice, then gradually became still again. The movement seemed to settle naturally into the quiet atmosphere of the room. On the windowsill sat 3 small clay pots. One held fresh mint, another carried delicate lavender. The third held a tiny rosemary plant, whose fragrance became stronger whenever the afternoon sun warmed its leaves. The pleasant scents blended softly with the familiar smell of old paper and polished oak. Together, they created an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in Willow Creek. It smelled of books, of sunlight, of wood warmed by passing seasons, of peaceful mornings that seemed never to end. Above the fireplace hung a watercolor painting of the village many years earlier. The roads were little more than dirt paths. Horse-drawn wagons stood outside the general store. Children gathered beneath a giant elm tree that no longer remained. Every morning, Elias paused to admire the painting, not because he wished to return to the past, but because it reminded him that quiet places could leave lasting memories. Time moved gently inside the little reading room. Even the sunlight seemed reluctant to leave. Slowly, it climbed across the wooden floor until it rested beneath the bookshelf nearest the south window. Dust floated through its golden beams like tiny stars suspended in warm air. Nothing disturbed the silence. Nothing needed to. From somewhere outside came the cheerful song of a robin. A moment later, another answered from across the garden. The sounds blended naturally with the quiet ticking of the small brass clock. Tick. Pause. Tick. Pause. Every sound belonged. None asked for attention. They simply became part of the peaceful morning. Elias crossed to the small cabinet beside the fireplace. Inside rested several folded wool blankets. They were offered during the colder months to anyone wishing to read beside the fire. He unfolded one carefully. Its soft green fabric still carried the faint scent of cedar from the wooden chest where it had been stored through the summer. He folded it once again with patient hands before returning it to its place. Everything in the room reflected quiet care. Nothing was expensive. Nothing was grand. Yet every object seemed deeply appreciated. The reading room had never tried to impress anyone. Instead, it offered something far more valuable: comfort. As the morning continued, a narrow beam of sunlight reached the round oak table. Its warm glow rested upon an empty chair, waiting for the day's first reader. Elias stood for another peaceful moment, listening to the gentle silence that filled every corner. Then, with one last glance around the room, he quietly stepped back into the main library. Behind him, the little reading room remained exactly as it had always been: warm, welcoming, patient, ready to offer a quiet place for anyone who wished to spend an hour with a good book and the gentle company of silence. Outside, Willow Creek continued its calm morning beneath a clear blue sky. Inside, the little reading room waited peacefully, as though time itself had decided to sit down, open a book, and rest for a while. The morning continued with its familiar quiet rhythm. The village of Willow Creek had fully awakened now, though no one seemed to be in any particular hurry. A few neighbors exchanged warm smiles as they crossed the main street. The baker carried fresh loaves to the front window of his little shop. A farmer guided his horse and wagon at an easy pace toward the market square. Everything moved gently, as though the entire village had agreed that there was always enough time. Inside the library, the calm remained unchanged. The tall shelves stood patiently beneath the growing daylight. The reading tables rested in perfect order. The grandfather clock continued its steady conversation with the passing hours. Tick. Pause. Tick. Pause. Elias Turner had just finished arranging a small collection of poetry books when he noticed a subtle change in the light. The sunshine that had filled the windows just moments before had begun to soften. Bright golden beams slowly faded into gentle shades of silver. He lifted his eyes toward the eastern windows. High above Willow Creek, a blanket of pale gray clouds drifted quietly across the sky. There was nothing dramatic about their arrival. No rushing wind, no dark shadows, only the slow gathering of clouds that promised a peaceful afternoon of rain. Elias walked toward one of the tall windows and rested a hand upon the smooth wooden frame. Outside, the maple leaves had become almost perfectly still. The air carried that familiar freshness which often arrived just before a gentle rain. It smelled of cool earth, of pine trees beyond the village, of distant fields waiting patiently for water. For a few quiet moments, nothing happened. The village simply waited. Then, almost too softly to notice, the first raindrop landed upon the glass. A tiny circle of water shimmered in the light. Another followed, then another. Within minutes, hundreds of delicate drops traced quiet paths down the windows. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was so gentle that it blended naturally with the ticking of the clock. Soon the entire library was wrapped in one of nature's most comforting melodies. Rain against old glass. Soft enough to relax the mind. Steady enough to calm the heart. Elias smiled to himself. Rainy days had always been his favorite days at the library. Visitors often stayed a little longer. Books somehow felt warmer in their hands. Even silence seemed softer. He walked slowly through the building, closing each window that had welcomed the morning breeze. One by one, the brass latches clicked gently into place. The fresh scent of rain still drifted inside before the windows were fully closed. It mingled with the familiar fragrance of polished oak, old paper, and worn leather bindings. The combination was comforting beyond words. As the rain settled into a peaceful rhythm, the library became even quieter. The outside world appeared slightly blurred beyond the wet glass. The rooftops shimmered beneath tiny streams of water. The stone pathway leading to the front door glistened like polished slate. Across the street, the flower boxes beneath the bakery windows drank deeply from the gentle shower. Nothing looked gloomy. Instead, everything seemed freshly washed and wonderfully peaceful. Elias made his way to the old stone fireplace in the little reading room. Although the day was not especially cold, rainy afternoons always invited a little extra warmth. He knelt beside the hearth. Inside the neatly stacked wood basket rested several pieces of seasoned oak. Each log had been split and dried many months before. He selected 2 medium-sized pieces and placed them carefully upon the iron grate. A handful of dry pine kindling followed. With practiced hands, he struck a small match. Its tiny flame glowed for only a moment before touching the waiting wood. The kindling answered with a quiet crackle. Soon, a small orange flame stretched upward. Patiently, unhurried, just as everything else in Willow Creek seemed to do. Within a few minutes, the fire settled into a gentle, steady burn. Soft, golden light danced across the fireplace. Warmth slowly spread throughout the reading room. The rocking chair beside the hearth looked even more inviting now. The rain continued outside. The fire whispered inside. Between the two sounds, the library felt like the safest place in the world. Elias placed the black iron kettle above the fire. He filled it with fresh well water collected earlier that morning. As the minutes passed, tiny bubbles began to gather along the bottom. A faint ribbon of steam curled upward. The comforting promise of afternoon tea quietly filled the room. He opened a small wooden tin resting on a nearby shelf. Inside were dried chamomile flowers gathered from the library garden during the previous summer. Their delicate fragrance drifted gently into the warm air. Beside them rested dried mint leaves and a little lavender. Simple ingredients, simple comforts. The sort of things that made an ordinary rainy day feel quietly memorable. Outside, the rain never hurried. It simply continued its peaceful conversation with the roof, the windows, the trees, and the earth. Water slipped from the edge of the library roof in clear silver strands. Small puddles formed beside the garden path. A robin sheltered beneath the wide branches of an old maple tree, shaking its feathers now and then before settling once more. The village itself seemed to breathe more slowly. Even the distant sounds of wagons had faded. Only the gentle rain remained. Elias carried his steaming cup of tea to the little reading room. He settled into the old rocking chair beside the fireplace. The chair moved almost silently. Forward, back, forward, back. He opened a slim volume of nature essays that he had read many times over the years. There was no need to hurry through its pages. The words were familiar, comfortable, like listening to an old friend speak in a calm, steady voice. Every so often, he paused to look through the rain-covered windows. Tiny streams of water wandered lazily down the glass, catching the soft glow of the firelight behind him. The garden beyond looked greener than it had only an hour before. The flowers bowed gently beneath the weight of fresh raindrops. The world seemed cleaner, quieter, more peaceful. The afternoon drifted onward almost unnoticed. The clock continued its faithful rhythm. The fire burned steadily. The tea remained warm. The rain sang softly against the windows. And inside the old library, surrounded by books, wood, gentle light, and quiet memories, Elias Turner felt exactly where he belonged. For him, there was no finer place to spend a rainy day than among stories waiting patiently upon their shelves, while the peaceful rain wrote its own quiet story upon the windows of Willow Creek. The gentle rain continued through most of the afternoon. By the time the old grandfather clock quietly announced 3 peaceful hours after noon, the steady shower had softened into a light mist that floated above the streets of Willow Creek. Tiny drops still clung to every maple leaf. The stone pathways glistened beneath the pale afternoon sky. Fresh rainwater rested in small puddles that reflected drifting clouds like little mirrors upon the earth. Inside the library, the fire had settled into glowing red embers. The warmth remained, wrapping every room in quiet comfort. Elias Turner finished the last sip of his chamomile tea and placed the empty cup carefully upon a small wooden tray. He listened. The rain had almost stopped. Only an occasional drop fell from the branches outside. This was the perfect time. Every Tuesday afternoon, after the busiest part of the day had passed, Elias followed a tradition that had quietly continued for many years. He visited readers who could no longer make the walk to the library. Some were simply growing older. Some found the village hills a little steeper than they once were. Others preferred the comfort of their porches during changing seasons. Whatever the reason, Elias believed that stories should travel whenever readers could not. Near the back entrance of the library stood a small wooden cart. Its 4 iron wheels had carried books through Willow Creek for nearly 30 years. The oak handle had become smooth beneath countless careful hands. The shelves were just large enough to hold 2 neat rows of books. Nothing about the cart was fancy. Its paint had long since faded. A tiny scratch marked one corner where it had gently brushed against the library gate many summers ago. Its wheels made a quiet wooden rumble instead of a squeak. Elias often thought that the cart sounded almost like a slow little train making its familiar journey through the village. He smiled as he opened a handwritten notebook resting beside the circulation desk. Each Tuesday's route had been carefully recorded inside. Not because it was complicated, simply because routines brought comfort. The first name on today's list was Mrs. Eleanor Brooks. She lived only a few streets away in a white cottage surrounded by climbing roses. Beside her name, Elias had written a small note several weeks earlier. More poetry, especially Robert Frost. He walked slowly through the poetry shelves. His fingers rested gently upon familiar bindings until they stopped at a deep green volume. Then another, a collection of Emily Dickinson, a beautifully illustrated book of American woodland poems. Each book was inspected carefully before being placed inside the cart. Next came Mr. Samuel Harris. Samuel had once worked on the railroad that connected Willow Creek with larger towns many miles away. Although his working days had long passed, his love for trains had never faded. Elias selected A History of Early American Railroads, a small book filled with hand-drawn locomotives, and a travel journal written by a conductor who had crossed the mountains many decades before. Finally came Mrs. Abigail Porter. She preferred gardening books, simple cookbooks, stories filled with quiet countryside life. Elias chose several volumes that smelled faintly of lavender from years spent upon sunny shelves. Soon, the traveling cart looked wonderfully full. Books rested side by side like patient companions preparing for a peaceful afternoon stroll. Before leaving, Elias reached for a folded wool blanket hanging beside the back door. The air after rain could still feel cool. He draped the blanket gently across the books to protect them from any lingering mist. Satisfied, he buttoned his navy coat, placed his cap upon his silver hair, opened the back door, and stepped quietly into the fresh afternoon. The world smelled wonderfully clean. Rain had awakened every scent the village carried: wet cedar fences, fresh earth, pine needles, blooming roses, the rich fragrance of damp wooden barns. Even the quiet river beyond the mill seemed to carry a sweeter scent after the rain. Elias began pushing the cart along the narrow path behind the library. Its wooden wheels rolled slowly over the damp stones. Rumble, pause, rumble, pause. The gentle sound blended naturally with birds returning after the rain. A pair of sparrows hopped across the pathway ahead of him before lifting softly into the nearby bushes. Farther down the lane, children wearing little rubber boots searched happily for puddles. Their laughter floated lightly through the cool air. Never loud, never hurried. Soon they disappeared around a corner, leaving the village peaceful once again. As Elias turned onto Maple Lane, the afternoon sunlight slowly emerged from behind the thinning clouds. Golden rays slipped between dripping branches. Tiny raindrops hanging from the leaves sparkled like rows of tiny glass beads. The entire village seemed to shine. Every garden looked greener. Every flower stood a little taller. Every rooftop reflected gentle light. It was the sort of afternoon that invited long walks without destination. The little book cart rolled faithfully beside him. Many villagers smiled as he passed. No one interrupted his quiet journey. Some simply tipped their hats. Others raised a gentle hand in greeting. In Willow Creek, silence between neighbors never felt uncomfortable. It felt respectful, comfortable, friendly. Before long, the white cottage of Mrs. Eleanor Brooks appeared at the end of a winding garden path. White roses climbed around the porch railings. Blue shutters framed the windows. A wooden rocking chair rested quietly beneath the covered porch. Its gentle movement suggested that someone had been sitting there only moments before. Elias guided the cart through the small garden gate. The gate clicked softly behind him. He paused for a moment to admire the flowers. Raindrops still rested on every rose petal. Their fragrance filled the cool afternoon air. He climbed the 3 wooden steps to the porch. Instead of knocking loudly, as strangers often might, Elias gave the old brass bell beside the door a single gentle ring. Its delicate tone floated softly through the cottage. Only once. There was never any need for more. After a quiet moment, the door opened slowly. Mrs. Brooks greeted him with the same warm smile she had worn every Tuesday for as long as either of them could remember. Neither spoke immediately. Neither needed to. Sometimes kindness arrived most beautifully without words. Elias lifted the first book from beneath the blanket. Its green cover caught the afternoon light. Mrs. Brooks accepted it carefully with both hands, as though receiving an old friend returning home. One by one, the remaining books followed. Poems, nature essays, stories of peaceful forests and snowy mornings. Exactly the sort of companions that suited a quiet afternoon beside her window. For a few comfortable minutes, they stood together on the porch, listening to the last raindrops fall gently from the maple trees. The village around them remained calm. The air smelled fresh. The sky had begun to brighten, and the little traveling book cart waited patiently at the foot of the steps, ready to continue its gentle journey through Willow Creek, carrying not simply books, but quiet moments of comfort from one peaceful home to another. He simply admired it for a quiet moment before unlocking the heavy oak door. The library welcomed him with its familiar stillness. Inside, the air carried the comforting scent of old books, seasoned oak, and the faint sweetness of the morning's fire. The grandfather clock continued its patient rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Nothing seemed to have changed while he was away, and somehow that was exactly what made the place feel like home. He carefully returned the traveling cart to its place beside the back hallway. One by one, he lifted the remaining books from its shelves. Each volume was returned to its familiar place with gentle hands. A collection of American birds rested beside the nature guides. A volume of poetry slipped neatly between two well-loved anthologies. A gardening almanac found its place beside a row of worn cookbooks. Every shelf looked complete once again. The afternoon sun lingered quietly above Willow Creek as Elias Turner made his unhurried way back to the library. The little wooden book cart rolled gently behind him, now much lighter than before. Most of the books had found their temporary homes in the welcoming hands of old friends across the village. Only a few volumes remained upon the lower shelf, waiting to be returned to their proper places before evening. The streets glistened softly after the rain. Small puddles still rested beside the stone path, reflecting patches of blue sky drifting between slow-moving clouds. A cool breeze wandered through the maple trees, carrying the clean scent of damp earth and fresh pine. The village felt renewed. Every flower seemed a little brighter. Every leaf appeared freshly polished by the gentle rain. As Elias reached the library steps, he paused for a moment. The familiar building stood peacefully beneath the soft afternoon light. Its tall walls held the warmth of many seasons. The tall windows reflected the quiet sky. Above the entrance, the carved wooden sign swayed ever so slightly in the breeze. It was a sight Elias had seen thousands of times. Yet he never hurried past it. Satisfied, Elias brushed a small speck of dust from his sleeve and walked toward the little kitchen tucked quietly behind the reading room. The kitchen was simple: a cast-iron stove, a wooden counter polished smooth by decades of use, open shelves lined with white ceramic cups, glass jars filled with dried herbs, a small window overlooking the library garden. The room was modest, but it held everything needed for one of Elias's favorite daily rituals: afternoon tea. He lifted the black kettle from its hook and carried it to the hand pump outside the back door. The pump handle moved with a slow, familiar rhythm. Fresh well water splashed into the kettle, cool and crystal clear. Returning inside, he placed the kettle gently upon the warm stove. Soon, a quiet hum filled the little kitchen as the water slowly began to heat. There was no rush. Tea, Elias believed, should never be hurried. While the kettle warmed, he opened a small wooden cupboard. Inside rested neatly labeled tins collected over many years: chamomile, peppermint, lavender, lemon balm. Each herb had been gathered from local gardens or exchanged with neighbors during harvest season. Today felt like a chamomile afternoon. He removed the tin and lifted its lid. A soft, honey-like fragrance drifted into the room. It carried memories of warm summer fields and quiet evenings beneath golden skies. He measured a small handful into a porcelain teapot decorated with tiny blue forget-me-not flowers. The design had faded slightly over the years, but its gentle beauty remained. When the kettle began to whisper with steam, Elias poured the hot water slowly over the dried blossoms. The herbs floated gently before settling into a peaceful dance beneath the surface. A warm cloud of fragrant steam rose into the air. The kitchen filled with the soothing aroma of chamomile and fresh mint. For a few moments, Elias simply stood and breathed deeply. There were few comforts in life as simple and complete as the scent of tea quietly steeping on a rainy afternoon. Next came the biscuits. From a round tin upon the highest shelf, he lifted 6 small butter biscuits, baked that very morning by Mrs. Margaret Ellis, the village baker. Every Tuesday, she quietly left a fresh batch on the library doorstep before sunrise. She never expected payment. Elias always returned the kindness by keeping the library supplied with her favorite mystery novels. Neither considered it a transaction. It was simply one neighbor caring for another. He arranged the biscuits neatly upon a small blue ceramic plate. Their golden tops caught the afternoon light filtering through the kitchen window. A few crumbs rested upon the cloth beneath them, but Elias did not mind. Even small imperfections carried their own quiet charm. Carrying the teapot, a single cup, and the plate of biscuits upon a polished wooden tray, he returned to the little reading room. The fire had softened into glowing embers. Now and then, a small piece of oak settled with a gentle crackle. Outside, the rain had completely passed. The windows framed a peaceful garden sparkling beneath the returning sunshine. Tiny droplets still clung to the petals of daisies and lavender. A robin hopped carefully across the garden path, pausing every few steps, as though admiring the quiet afternoon. Elias placed the tray upon the round oak table. He poured himself a cup of tea. The pale golden liquid shimmered softly as delicate wisps of steam curled upward. He picked up one biscuit and broke it gently in half. The crisp outer layer gave way with the softest sound. The warm, buttery aroma blended beautifully with the fragrance of chamomile. He settled into the old rocking chair beside the fireplace. Forward, back, forward, back. The movement was so gentle that the tea barely rippled inside the cup. He reached for a slim collection of essays by an American naturalist. The book had accompanied many peaceful afternoons over the years. Its pages had grown soft from careful reading, its corners rounded by time. Rather than reading quickly, Elias allowed his eyes to wander slowly across each page. Some paragraphs were familiar enough that he scarcely needed to read the words. He simply remembered them. Outside, the sunlight shifted little by little across the garden. The shadows of maple branches stretched gracefully over the grass. A butterfly rested upon a lavender blossom before floating quietly toward the roses. The world seemed to breathe in slow harmony. The library, too, appeared content. The books rested peacefully upon their shelves. The clock continued its faithful rhythm. The fire offered its last gentle warmth. Tea steamed quietly in the afternoon light. And somewhere deep within the calm silence of Willow Creek, another ordinary day became another beautiful memory. One measured not by excitement or grand events, but by warm tea, good books, kind neighbors, and the quiet happiness found in life's simplest moments. The afternoon drifted onward with the quiet confidence of a day that had nowhere else to be. Beyond the tall windows of Willow Creek Public Library, the sunlight had softened into a gentle golden glow. The rain-washed village seemed almost brighter than before, as if every rooftop, every garden path, and every maple leaf had quietly thanked the passing clouds. Inside the library, the peaceful rhythm continued. The grandfather clock marked the passing minutes with its familiar voice. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The little reading room had grown wonderfully still. The cup of chamomile tea rested empty upon the round oak table. Only the faint fragrance of herbs lingered in the warm air, mixing gently with the comforting scent of old paper and polished wood. Elias Turner closed the small essay collection and carefully returned it to its place upon the nearby shelf. There was another task waiting, one he always approached with quiet patience. Every Wednesday afternoon, Elias inspected returned books before placing them back into circulation. Most simply needed a light dusting. Occasionally, a loose page required careful repair. Sometimes, a worn cover received a little polish. And every now and then, a forgotten surprise quietly revealed itself. He carried a small stack of returned books to the long oak work table near the south window. The afternoon sunlight rested warmly across its smooth surface. Waiting neatly beside the table were the familiar tools of his quiet craft: a soft cotton cloth, a small brush, archival paper, a magnifying glass, a slender bottle of bookbinding glue. Nothing looked hurried. Everything waited patiently. Elias picked up the first book. It was a well-loved collection of American nature poems. The green cloth cover had faded gently after many years beneath sunlight. He opened the front cover. The pages turned with a soft whisper. As always, he checked each section slowly. Not because he expected to find anything, simply because careful books deserved careful attention. Halfway through the volume, something caught his eye. A narrow ribbon rested quietly between two pages. Not the ribbon that belonged to the book, another one, made of pale blue satin. Its edges had softened with age. Elias lifted it gently. There was no name attached, no explanation, only a simple ribbon that someone had once chosen to mark a favorite poem. He smiled. Some readers left tiny pieces of themselves inside books without ever realizing it. The ribbon was placed inside a small wooden box labeled "Found Between Pages." The box rested upon the highest shelf of his office. Inside were dozens of little discoveries collected over many years. Nothing valuable, nothing expensive, only small reminders that books traveled through many gentle hands. He opened the next volume, a cookbook from nearly 40 years earlier. Its pages carried tiny marks of flour near several recipes. Someone had clearly enjoyed baking from its pages. Near the center, Elias discovered a handwritten shopping list folded neatly into quarters. Fresh butter, brown sugar, apples, cinnamon, tea. The handwriting was careful and rounded, perhaps written on an autumn morning many years ago, perhaps before a family gathering, perhaps before neighbors arrived carrying warm pies and cheerful conversation. He would never know, and somehow that mystery felt peaceful rather than troubling. He unfolded the paper carefully, smoothed its gentle creases, then placed it inside a protective envelope. One more quiet memory preserved. Outside the window, a pair of squirrels chased each other lazily along the stone garden wall before disappearing beneath a cedar tree. The afternoon breeze stirred the lavender plants just enough to release another faint wave of fragrance into the open air. Everything beyond the glass seemed wonderfully calm. Returning to his work, Elias reached for a thick volume of local history. Its leather binding had darkened beautifully over the decades. As he slowly turned the pages, something delicate drifted onto the table. A pressed violet flower. Its once vivid purple petals had faded into soft shades of lavender and gray. Yet it remained perfectly preserved, light as a whisper. Elias held it carefully between his fingertips. He imagined someone walking through Willow Creek many springs ago. Perhaps a young teacher, perhaps a gardener, perhaps simply someone who noticed a beautiful flower along the path and wished to keep its memory. There was something comforting about knowing that ordinary days often left the gentlest treasures behind. He placed the flower between two sheets of archival paper. It would remain safe there for many years to come. The next discovery came from a children's storybook. Tucked neatly inside the final chapter was a tiny drawing made with colored pencils. It showed a little red bird sitting upon the branch of a large oak tree. The lines were wonderfully imperfect. The colors wandered beyond the edges. Across the bottom, written in careful block letters, appeared only 3 words: "For Grandpa." Nothing more. No signature, no date. Only those 2 simple words. Elias found himself smiling again. Somewhere, many years earlier, a child had proudly tucked that drawing into a favorite book. Perhaps the grandfather had smiled just as warmly upon finding it. Perhaps they had read the story together on quiet evenings beside a fireplace. Perhaps the drawing had quietly remained hidden ever since. Rather than wondering where it belonged, Elias simply appreciated that it had existed.
He slipped it gently into another protective folder. By now, the afternoon sunlight had grown softer. Long, golden beams stretched peacefully across the wooden floor. Dust floated lazily through the light like tiny stars. The library felt almost dreamlike. A place where memories rested quietly rather than disappearing. Elias opened one final book before the day ended. It was an old edition of Walden by Henry David Thoreau. The pages had yellowed with age. Near the final chapter rested a small folded letter. Its paper was cream-colored and wonderfully smooth despite the passing years. There was no envelope, only a single handwritten page. Elias unfolded it carefully. The ink had faded slightly, but every word remained clear. It read, "If you happen to find this note someday, I hope you are enjoying this book as much as I did. Perhaps you are sitting near a window. Perhaps it is raining outside. Or perhaps the morning sun is warming these very pages. Wherever you are, I wish you peace, good health, and many quiet afternoons with wonderful books." There was no signature, only a small date written neatly in one corner. October 14th, 1938. Elias remained still for a long moment.
Outside, the wind moved gently through the maple leaves. Inside, the clock continued its patient rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. He folded the letter exactly as he had found it. Then, after a thoughtful smile, he returned it to the same page inside the book. Some messages, he believed, were meant to continue their quiet journey from one reader to the next. Not every treasure needed to be collected. Some were happiest exactly where they had been lovingly left. As the afternoon slowly leaned toward evening, Elias placed the book carefully upon its shelf once again. The library settled into another peaceful silence. Rows of books stood quietly beneath the warm light. Each volume carried stories upon its pages, and perhaps, tucked gently between them, a few quiet stories of their readers as well. In Willow Creek Public Library, even the smallest forgotten note could become part of the building's gentle history, waiting patiently for another kind pair of hands to discover it, many peaceful years from now. The afternoon sunlight drifted slowly across the library floor, stretching into long golden ribbons that reached almost to the front entrance. Outside, Willow Creek rested beneath the sky washed clean by the morning rain. The air felt fresh. The maple leaves sparkled with tiny drops of water that had not yet completely disappeared. A gentle breeze wandered through the village, carrying with it the pleasant scent of pine trees, damp earth, and freshly baked bread from the little bakery across the square. Inside the library, the familiar silence remained. It was never an empty silence. It was filled with comforting sounds. The quiet ticking of the grandfather clock, the occasional settling of an old bookshelf, the gentle crackle from the last glowing pieces of oak resting inside the fireplace. And somewhere near the open window, the cheerful song of a robin greeting the peaceful afternoon. Elias Turner glanced toward the clock. Its brass hands rested a few minutes before 4. Wednesday afternoons always brought a very special tradition: the children's story hour. Unlike many libraries in larger cities, Willow Creek never welcomed large crowds, sometimes even fewer. But Elias believed that stories never measured their importance by the number of listeners. Even one child listening with wonder was enough. He walked toward a small cupboard beside the reading room. Inside were several soft cushions, sewn many years ago by members of the village quilting circle. Each cushion carried its own simple pattern: blue stars, green leaves, little red apples, golden sunflowers. Their colors had faded gently with time, becoming softer rather than duller. Elias carried the cushions one by one into the little reading room. He placed them carefully in a loose circle upon the polished wooden floor. No chair stood higher than another. Everyone would sit together, children and storyteller alike. Beside the fireplace stood a low wooden basket filled with picture books. Their covers showed forests, friendly animals, quiet rivers, snowy farms, and little cottages beneath starry skies. Nothing frightening, nothing hurried, only gentle adventures that ended with kindness. Elias selected one carefully. Its cloth cover displayed a watercolor painting of a tiny rabbit carrying a lantern through a peaceful woodland at sunset. The pages smelled faintly of paper, ink, and many happy afternoons. He placed the book upon his lap and waited. Outside, small footsteps approached the front porch. The wooden steps answered with soft creaks. A moment later, the library door opened quietly. The first visitor was little Clara Bennett. She was 7 years old and wore a pale yellow raincoat much too large for her small shoulders. Tiny droplets still rested upon the brim of her hat. She smiled shyly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Turner." "Good afternoon, Clara," Elias replied gently. "You've brought the sunshine with you." Clara giggled softly before carefully hanging her raincoat on the wooden hooks near the entrance. Soon another child arrived, then another. Benjamin carried a small notebook tucked beneath his arm. Lucy held her favorite knitted rabbit. Thomas carefully removed muddy boots before stepping onto the polished floor without being asked. Within a few peaceful minutes, 6 children sat comfortably upon the colorful cushions. The room felt warmer somehow, not louder, simply brighter. Children had a wonderful way of filling quiet places with gentle life. Elias looked around the circle. Each pair of curious eyes waited patiently. There was no rush to begin. He allowed a few quiet moments to settle naturally. Outside, A breeze stirred the leaves beyond the window. Inside, the clock continued its steady rhythm. Tick, pause. Tick, pause. Then, Elias slowly opened the picture book. The turning page made the softest whisper. "The Little Rabbit and the Evening Lantern," he read in his calm, warm voice. Every sentence flowed slowly. No dramatic voices. No exaggerated expressions. Only a peaceful rhythm, as though the story itself had all the time in the world. The children listened quietly. Clara hugged her knees. Benjamin rested his notebook beside him. Lucy gently stroked the knitted rabbit in her lap. No one interrupted. Even the youngest seemed perfectly content simply to listen. The little rabbit wandered through a quiet forest where fireflies glowed among tall ferns. He carried a tiny lantern, not because he was afraid of the dark, but because its warm light helped him admire the beautiful evening around him. He greeted sleepy birds, paused beside a gentle stream, shared a kind smile with an old turtle resting beneath a willow tree. Nothing exciting happened, nothing needed to. The beauty of the story lived in its peaceful moments. As Elias turned each page, sunlight slowly shifted across the room. Golden light climbed gently over the circle of cushions. The fireplace offered a final soft crackle before settling into glowing embers. Outside, a butterfly floated lazily through the garden before disappearing behind the lavender bushes. Time seemed to slow even further. Halfway through the story, Elias paused for a moment, not because he had forgotten the words, simply to let the quiet settle comfortably around everyone. The children did not fidget. They simply watched the illustrations or gazed toward the window where maple leaves danced softly in the afternoon breeze. When the story finally reached its gentle ending, the little rabbit returned home beneath a sky filled with quiet stars. He placed his lantern beside the door, looked once more at the peaceful forest, and whispered, "What a beautiful day." Elias closed the book slowly. The room remained wonderfully still. For several peaceful moments, no one spoke. Stories often became even more beautiful after the final page, when everyone simply carried them quietly in their thoughts. At last, Benjamin smiled. "I liked the turtle." "So did I," Elias replied softly. Clara looked toward the window. "I think the fireflies would be pretty." "I believe they would," Elias said. Lucy gently hugged her knitted rabbit. "I hope the rabbit sleeps well." "I'm quite sure he does." The children smiled. No long discussion followed. No excitement filled the room. Only quiet contentment. Before leaving, each child carefully returned their cushion to the basket without being reminded. Benjamin borrowed a small bird guide.
Lucy chose another gentle picture book. Clara selected a collection of bedtime stories with a faded blue cover. One by one, they thanked Elias. Their soft footsteps echoed gently across the wooden floor as they made their way toward the front door. Soon, the library became quiet once again. Outside, their cheerful voices faded gradually along Willow Street until only birdsong and the rustling maple leaves remained. Elias looked around the little reading room. The cushions had been neatly stacked. The storybook rested upon the table. Golden evening light filled every corner. He smiled to himself. Some afternoons were remembered because of remarkable events. Others were remembered because of something far simpler. A good story, a handful of kind children, a peaceful room, and an hour shared together in quiet happiness. As the shadows grew a little longer across the library floor, Willow Creek settled gently toward evening, carrying with it another beautiful chapter in the quiet life of its beloved old library.
Several peaceful weeks slipped quietly through Willow Creek. The warm afternoons of late summer gradually gave way to cooler mornings. The sunrise arrived a little later each day. The evenings became softer. The air carried a gentle crispness that hinted at the changing season. No one in the village needed a calendar to know that autumn was arriving. The trees told the story first. At the edge of the village, where the old maple grove met the winding creek, a few leaves had begun their slow transformation. Bright summer green softened into pale gold. Golden edges deepened into warm amber. Here and there, a single crimson leaf appeared like a tiny brushstroke upon a quiet painting. The changes were never sudden. Nature, Elias often believed, was the finest teacher of patience. Each morning she revealed only the smallest difference. Yet after many gentle mornings, the whole landscape had quietly transformed. As always, Elias Turner arrived before sunrise. The brass key turned softly inside the heavy oak door. The library welcomed him with its familiar scent of polished oak, old paper, and fading traces of yesterday's fire. Outside, the air felt cooler than it had only a week before. Inside, warmth still lingered among the shelves. He removed his coat carefully and hung it upon the wooden hook near the entrance. Today he wore a slightly thicker wool sweater beneath his vest. Its sleeves had been knitted years ago by his older sister. The elbows carried careful patches sewn with matching brown thread. He appreciated such repairs. They reminded him that well-loved things deserved to last. The grandfather clock greeted him. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The sound seemed especially comforting on cool autumn mornings. Elias crossed the reading room and slowly opened the eastern curtains. The first sunlight entered quietly. Its golden color appeared deeper now than during summer. Instead of bright white light, the room filled with warm honey-colored rays. Dust floated lazily through the beams like tiny golden stars. Outside the windows, the library garden looked wonderfully different. The lavender blossoms had faded. The last white daisies nodded gently beneath the cool breeze. Several maple leaves rested upon the garden path, their brilliant colors glowing softly against the damp gray stones. One leaf caught Elias's attention. It was almost perfectly shaped, deep crimson at its center, golden around its edges. Morning dew rested upon its surface like tiny glass beads. For several moments, he simply admired it through the window. There was no need to hurry outside. The leaf was beautiful exactly where it had chosen to rest. Soon, the village began to awaken. A farmer crossed the square, carrying a basket filled with freshly picked apples. The bright red fruit reflected the soaring sunlight. Across the street, Mrs. Margaret Ellis arranged small pumpkins outside her bakery beside baskets of cinnamon bread. Their warm colors made the entire street feel welcoming. Even the breeze seemed to carry new fragrances. Fresh apples, dry leaves, wood smoke drifting gently from distant chimneys. Autumn had its own quiet perfume. Inside the library, Elias reached for a small woven basket kept beside the front entrance. Every autumn, without planning it, the basket slowly filled with beautiful fallen leaves gathered from the library garden. Some visitors pressed them inside notebooks. Others used them as bookmarks. Children sometimes admired their wonderful colors before carefully placing them back inside. Elias never minded. Nature offered enough beauty to be shared. He stepped outside onto the front porch. The cool morning air touched his face. It felt fresh, comfortable, just enough to remind him that summer had quietly taken its leave. The library steps were sprinkled with maple leaves in shades of gold, copper, amber, and soft red. Rather than sweeping them away immediately, Elias bent down and gathered only a few. He chose the ones with the clearest colors and unbroken edges. Each leaf rested lightly in his hands. They seemed almost weightless, as though autumn itself had gently folded little pieces of sunlight into delicate shapes. He carried them inside. One by one, he arranged them within the woven basket. The basket now resembled a tiny forest floor. Warm colors rested together in peaceful harmony. Visitors would certainly notice them later. Perhaps someone would choose a favorite. Perhaps a child would quietly wonder why every leaf looked different. Simple questions often led to beautiful conversations. The remainder of the leaves stayed outside where they belonged. The breeze lifted one from the pathway. It drifted slowly across the porch, turned gracefully in the air, then settled quietly beside the old stone flower pot near the entrance. Elias watched its slow journey with quiet appreciation. Even a falling leaf seemed unhurried in Willow Creek. Returning indoors, he walked toward the little reading room. The fireplace waited patiently for cooler evenings still to come. Although it was not yet cold enough for a fire, Elias arranged fresh oak logs neatly inside the hearth. He enjoyed being prepared, not because winter hurried toward them, but because preparation itself carried a peaceful satisfaction. Nearby, the rocking chair rested beside the window. Sunlight warmed its wooden arms. Outside, a pair of chickadees hopped from branch to branch, collecting tiny seeds before the colder months arrived. They worked diligently, yet even they seemed calm. Nothing in the garden appeared rushed. The seasons understood their own rhythm. As the morning continued, the library welcomed its first visitors. A retired school teacher borrowed a book of American poetry. A young mother selected several picture books wrapped carefully in brown paper for her little daughter. An elderly couple paused beside the basket of autumn leaves. The woman gently lifted one golden maple leaf and smiled. "It reminds me of the tree behind my childhood home," she whispered. Her husband smiled warmly. "So it does." She returned the leaf to the basket with the same care one might use when closing the pages of a treasured book. Elias noticed the moment, but said nothing. Some memories preferred quiet company. By afternoon, sunlight filtered through branches now glowing with rich autumn color. Their moving shadows danced softly across the library floor. The windows framed the changing season like beautiful paintings. No two moments looked exactly alike. A breeze would stir. A handful of leaves would drift gracefully through the air. Then stillness would return. The afternoon passed almost unnoticed. Books found new readers. Readers found quiet corners. The grandfather clock continued its faithful rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Outside, autumn slowly painted Willow Creek, one leaf at a time. Inside, the library welcomed the season just as it welcomed every visitor, with warmth, patience, and quiet gratitude. As the golden light of late afternoon settled gently upon the old wooden shelves, Elias looked through the tall windows once more. Another leaf floated past, then another. Neither hurried toward the ground. They simply danced with the breeze until they found a peaceful place to rest. Watching them, Elias smiled softly. He often thought that stories were much like autumn leaves. Each one began somewhere high above. Each one traveled its own gentle path, and in the end, each found a quiet place to rest in someone's heart. The library grew still again. Outside, the leaves continued their graceful dance beneath the cool autumn sky. Inside, another beautiful day quietly became another treasured memory in the peaceful life of Willow Creek. Autumn lingered in Willow Creek for many quiet weeks. Each morning, Elias Turner watched another handful of maple leaves drift gently from the tall trees surrounding the library. The brilliant reds slowly faded into soft browns. The golden leaves became fewer with every passing day. The village welcomed the change without sadness. Every season carried its own quiet beauty, and every season, in its own gentle way, prepared the village for the next. By the middle of November, the mornings had become noticeably colder. When Elias stepped onto his front porch before sunrise, his breath appeared as little clouds in the crisp air. The grass shimmered beneath a blanket of silver frost. Tiny crystals rested on every fence rail, every mailbox, and every quiet rooftop. The stars still sparkled overhead when he began his familiar walk toward the library. The streets were peaceful. Only the distant sound of a rooster greeting the morning floated softly across the sleeping village. Even the creek seemed quieter now. Its slow-moving water reflected the pale light of the fading moon. Elias pulled his wool scarf a little closer around his neck. Its soft fibers held the comforting warmth of many winters.
The scarf had accompanied him through countless snowy mornings, each one becoming another gentle memory stitched into its familiar folds. As he reached the library, the old building stood patiently beneath the clear dawn sky. The brick walls carried traces of frost along their shaded side. The carved wooden sign above the entrance wore a thin outline of sparkling ice. Everything looked calm. Everything waited quietly for another peaceful day to begin. The brass key turned with its familiar click. The heavy oak door opened slowly. Cool air greeted him from inside. The library had grown chilly during the night. Not unpleasantly cold, only quiet enough to remind him that winter was drawing near. Before doing anything else, Elias walked directly to the little reading room. The stone fireplace rested silently beneath its sturdy mantel. A basket filled with carefully stacked oak logs waited beside it. He knelt slowly upon the woven rug. Selecting 2 dry pieces of oak, he arranged them neatly upon the iron grate. Then he added a handful of pine kindling collected during the autumn months. With practiced hands, he struck a single wooden match. The tiny flame flickered gently.
For a moment, it glowed like a little golden flower in the quiet room. Then it touched the waiting kindling. A soft crackle answered. Soon, small flames danced peacefully between the pieces of wood. There was never any hurry. A good fire preferred patience. Little by little, warmth began to spread through the reading room. The familiar scent of seasoned oak filled the air. It blended beautifully with the comforting fragrance of old books and polished wood. The room seemed to breathe a little easier. Outside, the eastern sky slowly brightened. Gentle shades of pale pink and soft blue appeared above the distant hills. Sunlight had not yet reached the village. Everything rested beneath the cool glow of early morning. Elias carried a small kettle of fresh well water to the fireplace and placed it carefully above the growing flames. Steam would come later. For now, the water simply waited, just like everything else. He walked through the library, opening the curtains one by one. The windows revealed a landscape quietly preparing for winter. The maple branches stood almost bare now. Only a few determined leaves still clung to the highest twigs.
The flower garden beside the library had settled into peaceful sleep. The lavender plants rested beneath pale frost. The rose bushes had folded themselves into quiet stillness. Nature was resting, gathering strength for another spring that would one day arrive. As the morning continued, clouds slowly gathered across the northern sky. They were not dark or threatening. Instead, they looked soft and full, like great blankets drifting gently above the hills. Elias noticed them while dusting the front desk. He smiled. The first snowfall was never far away when clouds looked like this. Visitors arrived throughout the morning, wrapped in thicker coats and warm knitted scarves. Mrs. Brooks borrowed another volume of poetry. Mr. Harris selected a history of old American railroads to enjoy beside his fireplace. A young father visited with his little daughter, who carefully chose a picture book about woodland animals preparing for winter. Everyone spoke a little more softly than usual. Perhaps the approaching winter encouraged quieter voices. Or perhaps the peaceful atmosphere of the library simply invited gentle conversation. By early afternoon, the light outside had become wonderfully soft. The clouds covered the sun completely. The world beyond the windows appeared wrapped in shades of silver and white. Then, almost too quietly to notice, the very first snowflake drifted past the eastern window. It floated slowly, turning gently in the air.
then disappeared beyond the garden wall. A second followed, then another. Within only a few minutes, dozens of tiny snowflakes danced gracefully through the afternoon sky. None hurried toward the earth. Each one seemed content to enjoy the journey. Elias stepped closer to the window. He rested one hand lightly upon the wooden frame. Outside, the library garden welcomed winter with complete stillness. The first delicate flakes settled upon the stone pathway. Others rested quietly upon the branches of the sleeping rose bushes. The grass slowly disappeared beneath a thin dusting of white. There was no wind, only the peaceful fall of snow. The village grew noticeably quieter. Snow had a remarkable way of softening every sound. The distant wagon wheels became little more than whispers. Footsteps upon the road grew gentler.
Even the birds seemed content to rest beneath sheltering branches. Inside the library, the fire burned steadily. Its warm glow reflected softly across the polished wooden floor. The kettle now released tiny curls of steam into the cozy room. The fragrance of chamomile tea soon joined the scent of burning oak. The contrast between the warm library and the snowy world outside created a feeling unlike any other season. Comfort, safety, stillness. Elias settled into the old rocking chair beside the fireplace. A thick wool blanket rested across his knees. A warm cup of tea sat upon the small table beside him. In his hands lay a well-loved collection of winter essays. He opened the book slowly. The pages whispered as they turned. Outside, the snow continued its quiet descent. The library windows slowly gathered delicate patterns of frost along their edges. Beyond the glass, Willow Creek was becoming a winter painting. White rooftops, snow-covered fences, silent gardens, smoke curling gently from distant chimneys. Time itself seemed to slow. The rocking chair moved gently, forward, back, forward, back. The grandfather clock continued its patient rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. The fire crackled softly. The tea remained warm. Snowflakes drifted silently from the sky. And as daylight gradually softened into the quiet glow of early evening, Willow Creek welcomed its first snowfall of the season, not with celebration or excitement, but with peaceful gratitude. For Elias Turner, there could be few places more comforting than an old library filled with books, gentle firelight, warm tea, and the silent beauty of falling snow. It was the kind of afternoon that asked nothing of the world, only that it slow down, only that it listen, and only that it enjoy the quiet gift of another beautiful winter beginning.
Morning arrived quietly after the night's gentle snowfall. Willow Creek awoke beneath a fresh blanket of white. Every rooftop wore a soft covering of snow. Fence posts stood like little white markers stretching across peaceful fields. The branches of the maple trees carried delicate layers of frost that sparkled whenever the first rays of sunlight reached them. Nothing appeared hurried. Nothing disturbed the stillness. Snow had a wonderful way of asking the whole world to slow down. Elias Turner left home just before sunrise, following the familiar path toward the library. His boots pressed gently into the fresh snow. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. Each footprint remained behind like a quiet memory. The cold morning air felt wonderfully fresh. His breath rose in slow white clouds before disappearing into the pale blue sky. From nearby chimneys, thin ribbons of smoke drifted upward without hurry. The scent of burning oak and cedar floated softly through the village.
Winter had settled comfortably into Willow Creek. As always, Elias unlocked the heavy oak door and stepped inside. The library greeted him with its familiar silence. The warmth from yesterday's fire had faded during the night, leaving the rooms cool but welcoming. He hung his coat upon its usual hook, removed his wool gloves, then walked quietly to the little reading room. Soon another fire glowed inside the old stone fireplace. Its gentle crackling slowly chased away the morning chill. Golden light flickered across the bookshelves. The library seemed to awaken little by little. After preparing a kettle of hot water and opening the curtains, Elias began one of his favorite winter tasks. During the colder months, fewer visitors climbed the narrow staircase leading to the library's upper gallery. Dust gathered a little more quickly there, so every few weeks, Elias climbed the old spiral staircase to inspect the highest shelves. The wooden steps curved upward beside a tall stained glass window. Morning sunlight filtered through the colored glass, painting gentle patches of blue, amber, and crimson upon the staircase. Each step answered with a familiar creak. Not loud, only enough to remind him that the library had faithfully carried countless footsteps across many generations. At the top of the gallery, long rows of books rested quietly beneath the sloping roof. Many had not been borrowed for years. Large encyclopedias, historical records, collections of local newspapers carefully bound together, old family genealogies, travel journals written by explorers who crossed mountains and rivers long before modern highways existed. The upper gallery always felt wonderfully peaceful, even quieter than the rooms below. Only the faint ticking of the grandfather clock drifted upward through the open space. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Elias smiled. The sound reached every corner of the library. He carried a soft feather duster beneath one arm as he slowly walked along the highest shelves. Dust floated gently through the beams of winter sunlight. Tiny sparkling particles drifted like snowflakes inside the warm library air. His fingers brushed lightly across familiar book spines.
Some volumes had become trusted companions over the years. Others remained quiet strangers, waiting patiently for someone to discover them again. Near the far end of the gallery, tucked between two oversized history books, something caught his attention. A broad leather spine, dark brown with faded gold lettering, almost hidden beneath decades of careful dust. Elias gently pulled the heavy volume forward. It was larger than most books in the library. Its leather cover had softened with age. The corners were rounded from careful handling many years ago. Across the front, embossed in worn gold letters, were simple words: Atlas of the American States and Territories. Elias smiled warmly. He had not opened this atlas in several years. Its weight felt comforting in his hands, almost like lifting a small wooden chest filled with quiet memories. He carried it carefully to the large reading table overlooking the main library below. The thick oak table stood beside a dormer window where winter sunlight poured gently inside. Outside, snow rested peacefully upon every rooftop. Beyond the village, the distant hills rolled softly beneath a blanket of white.
Elias placed the atlas upon the table. Slowly, he opened the heavy cover. The old binding answered with a gentle sigh. Inside waited page after page of beautifully illustrated maps. Each one had been drawn carefully by hand many decades earlier. The colors had softened with age. Deep forests appeared in muted shades of green. Mountain ranges stretched across the paper in delicate brown lines. Blue rivers wound peacefully through valleys and quiet towns. There were no bright colors, no sharp designs. Everything invited slow observation. Elias rested one hand lightly upon the first map. It showed New England as it had appeared many years before. Tiny villages dotted the countryside. Narrow railroads connected one peaceful town to another. Winding roads followed rivers instead of cutting across mountains. Many of the towns still existed. Some had changed. Others had quietly disappeared over the passing years. He traced one river with his fingertip. It began high among distant hills, flowed gently through forests, past farms, crossed small villages,
eventually reaching the sea far beyond the edge of the map. He imagined the quiet journey of that river, never hurried, always moving, always patient, much like time itself. Turning another page, he found a beautifully detailed map of the Appalachian Mountains. Small illustrations marked old cabins, forest trails, mountain inns, tiny churches standing beside winding roads. He imagined travelers moving slowly along those paths many winters ago, horse-drawn wagons creaking gently through snowy valleys, lanterns glowing warmly at welcoming inns, simple suppers shared beside stone fireplaces, stories exchanged before everyone settled into peaceful sleep. The maps did not merely show places, they suggested lives, quiet, ordinary lives lived among forests, rivers, farms, and small American towns. Elias lingered over each page. There was no destination, no search, only quiet appreciation. Outside the dormer window, a single snowflake drifted lazily past, then another. A light snowfall had quietly begun once again. The flakes floated gently across the glass, reminding him of dust dancing through sunlight earlier that morning. The world outside and the library inside seemed to share the same peaceful rhythm. After some time, Elias reached a map showing the growing railroad network of America. Thin black lines stretched across the country like carefully stitched threads. Some reached great cities. Others wandered into small towns whose names few people remembered now. He thought of Mr. Samuel Harris,
who so often borrowed books about the railroads. Perhaps this atlas had once fascinated him too. Perhaps one afternoon he would place it upon the reading table and invite Samuel to spend an hour tracing old railway lines with quiet conversation and warm tea nearby. The thought made him smile. Very carefully, Elias closed the great atlas. A small cloud of dust rose gently into the winter sunlight before settling once again. He brushed the leather cover softly with his cloth, then returned the book upon its upper shelf. Not forgotten, simply waiting. Waiting for another peaceful winter morning. Waiting for another curious reader. Waiting patiently, just as old books always seemed willing to do. As Elias descended the spiral staircase, the comforting warmth of the library welcomed him once again. The fire crackled softly. The grandfather clock continued its faithful rhythm. Snow drifted peacefully beyond the windows, and somewhere, high upon the quiet shelves, the great atlas rested once more, holding within its pages countless gentle journeys across a slower, quieter America.
The snowfall continued gently through the night. By morning, Willow Creek had become a village of soft white rooftops and quiet winding paths. Every fence post wore a little cap of snow. Every chimney sent thin ribbons of smoke into the still winter sky. Even the old creek beyond the mill seemed to move more slowly beneath its delicate edge of ice. Long before sunrise, the village remained peacefully asleep. No wagon wheels rolled along the roads, no shop doors opened. Only the distant hoot of a great horned owl lingered for a few quiet moments before fading into the winter darkness. Elias Turner awoke as he always did. Not because of an alarm. His mornings had followed the same gentle rhythm for so many years that his body seemed to understand the arrival of dawn long before the first light touched the sky. He lit the small oil lamp beside his bed. Its warm glow filled the modest room without disturbing its calm. The floorboards answered softly beneath his careful footsteps as he dressed in warm layers. A thick wool sweater, a neatly pressed cotton shirt, his familiar brown trousers, the patched navy coat hanging patiently beside the front door.
Before leaving, Elias placed a small handful of birdseed into the pocket of his coat. It had become another quiet winter habit. Outside, the cold air welcomed him gently. Fresh snow gave a pleasant crunch beneath his boots. Crunch, pause, crunch, pause. The stars still sparkled overhead. The moon rested low above the western hills, casting a pale silver light across the peaceful village. Every familiar landmark appeared softened beneath the snow. The old bakery, the little church, the general store. Each seemed wrapped in a peaceful blanket of silence. As Elias reached the library, he noticed tiny footprints crossing the front garden. Not human footprints, small rabbit tracks. They wandered between the sleeping rose bushes before disappearing beneath a cedar hedge. He smiled. The little visitor had enjoyed a quiet journey during the night. Removing the brass key from his pocket, he unlocked the heavy oak door.
The library greeted him with cool stillness. The warmth from yesterday's fire had faded completely. The rooms felt crisp but welcoming. There was something comforting about arriving before anyone else. The building seemed to awaken slowly, almost gratefully, with each familiar morning task. Elias hung his coat upon its usual hook. He removed his scarf and gloves, folding them carefully on the front desk. The grandfather clock continued faithfully through the quiet darkness. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Its steady rhythm sounded even more peaceful before sunrise. Without delay, Elias carried several pieces of seasoned oak into the little reading room. He arranged them carefully upon the fireplace grate. Each log rested comfortably beside the next. A little pine kindling filled the spaces beneath. One wooden match, one small flame, a gentle crackle. Soon, warm orange light danced across the old stone hearth.
The fire stretched lazily upward, slowly filling the room with comforting warmth. The scent of burning oak drifted softly through the library. It blended beautifully with the familiar fragrance of paper, leather, cedar shelves, and polished wood. Few places in the world, Elias thought, smelled quite as comforting as a library on a winter morning. Next came the kettle. Fresh water from the hand pump, a black iron kettle placed carefully above the growing fire. Soon, tiny bubbles gathered quietly along the bottom. Steam curled upward in thin white ribbons. The room seemed to breathe a little easier. As the warmth spread, Elias moved through the library, opening each curtain. Outside, the first pale light of morning began to appear. The snowy landscape reflected that gentle light so completely that the whole village seemed to glow. The maple branches sparkled with frost. Icicles hung beneath the library roof like rows of tiny crystal chimes. A pair of cardinals landed upon the cedar fence, their bright red feathers standing out beautifully against the endless white. Elias reached into his coat pocket. Stepping quietly onto the front porch, he scattered the birdseed across a small wooden feeder fastened beside the garden. The cardinals watched patiently from the fence. Within moments, joined by several cheerful chickadees and 2 plump sparrows, they fluttered down to enjoy the morning breakfast. Elias stood quietly nearby. He never tried to approach, he simply watched. Winter asked neighbors to care for one another in quiet ways. Sometimes those neighbors happened to have feathers. Returning indoors, he closed the door gently behind him. The warmth from the fireplace had already begun reaching the front reading room. The windows slowly cleared as the frost melted from their inside edges. Golden morning light now slipped softly across the polished wooden floor. Dust drifted lazily through its beams. The library had awakened. He collected a soft cloth and walked from shelf to shelf, straightening books ever so slightly. Some leaned a little too far. Others rested unevenly after yesterday's visitors. Each adjustment required only a gentle touch. There was no perfect arrangement, only a feeling that everything belonged peacefully where it rested. At one shelf, Elias paused before a row of classic American novels. Many had been borrowed countless times over the decades. Their cloth bindings had faded. The corners had rounded. Several carried tiny pencil marks inside their covers where librarians long ago had carefully recorded return dates. He smiled at the familiar handwriting. Some of those librarians had retired before he first arrived. Others had become only quiet memories. Yet their careful work remained visible in every well-loved book. The library carried many caretakers within its walls. As the morning continued, the kettle began its gentle whisper. Tea time had arrived once again. Today, Elias chose peppermint leaves gathered during the previous summer. Their cool, refreshing fragrance filled the little reading room as the tea slowly steeped. He placed one simple oatmeal biscuit upon a small blue plate. Nothing more was needed. The tea, the warmth, the quiet fire, and the snowy morning beyond the windows were already enough. Carrying his cup, he settled beside the fireplace. The old rocking chair welcomed him with its familiar movement. Forward, back, forward, back. Outside, tiny snowflakes began falling once more. Not many, only enough to remind the village that winter still lingered peacefully among the hills. The birds continued visiting the feeder. Their tiny footprints decorated the fresh snow beneath it. The fire crackled softly. Steam rose from the tea. The grandfather clock marked another gentle hour. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Elias wrapped both hands around the warm cup and looked through the tall library windows. The world beyond seemed wonderfully simple. White fields, quiet rooftops, bare trees, soft falling snow. Inside, rows of patient books waited peacefully upon their shelves. Every volume held countless journeys, yet none of them hurried. Neither did the old library, nor the village, nor the man who cared for them all with quiet devotion. On mornings like this, Elias often thought that happiness did not arrive through grand adventures or remarkable discoveries. Sometimes it arrived with something much smaller. A warm room, a cup of peppermint tea, a steady fire, snow falling beyond old windows, and another peaceful winter morning spent among faithful books. The library rested in complete harmony with the season, holding warmth against the cold and stories against the silence, just as it had done for generations. Outside, Willow Creek continued sleeping beneath its blanket of snow. Inside, another beautiful day had only just begun. Winter settled comfortably over Willow Creek. Days arrived quietly. Evenings came a little earlier. The snow that had fallen several days before still rested upon rooftops, garden fences, and the gentle hills beyond the village. Fresh footprints appeared each morning, only to be covered again by another light dusting of snow during the night. The library seemed happier in winter, not because more people visited. In fact, there were often fewer visitors than during spring or autumn, but those who did come rarely hurried away. They lingered, they borrowed a book, they warmed their hands beside the fire. Sometimes they simply enjoyed the peaceful company of silence. On this particular afternoon, the little reading room glowed with a gentle warmth. The oak logs in the fireplace had been burning steadily since morning. Soft orange flames rose and settled with quiet patience. Every now and then, a log shifted gently upon the grate. A small shower of glowing embers drifted upward before disappearing into the chimney. The room smelled wonderfully comforting. Burning oak, chamomile tea, old books, polished wood, a faint trace of cedar from the blanket chest beneath the window. Outside, tiny snowflakes floated lazily across the garden. They moved so slowly that they seemed almost suspended in the air. Elias Turner added another small log to the fire, not because the room had become cold, simply because he knew several familiar visitors would soon arrive. Every Thursday afternoon, without any formal invitation, a handful of neighbors gathered for what they quietly called the Fireplace Hour. There was no schedule, no announcements, no speeches, only a few comfortable chairs, a warm fire, fresh tea, and gentle conversation.
The first to arrive was Mr. Samuel Harris. His thick wool coat carried a dusting of fresh snow across the shoulders. He removed his cap carefully and brushed away the snow before hanging both upon the wooden coat rack. "Good afternoon, Elias." "Good afternoon, Samuel. I see the fire is already keeping good company. It has been waiting for you." Samuel smiled softly. He settled into the old rocking chair nearest the fireplace, stretching his hands toward the gentle warmth. For several quiet moments, neither man spoke. There was no need. The fire itself seemed content to carry the conversation. A few minutes later, Mrs. Eleanor Brooks arrived. Her knitted scarf, the color of deep forest moss, framed a kind face brightened by rosy cheeks from the winter air. She carried a small tin wrapped carefully with a blue ribbon. "For everyone," she said with a gentle smile. Inside rested homemade oatmeal cookies sprinkled with cinnamon.
Their sweet aroma filled the room almost immediately. Elias thanked her warmly and placed the tin upon the round oak table beside the teapot. Soon another familiar face appeared, Mr. Thomas Reed, the retired carpenter. His hands still carried the quiet strength earned from many years shaping oak, maple, and pine. Though he no longer built barns or repaired porches, he still admired every wooden detail inside the library. As always, before sitting down, Thomas gently ran one hand along the polished arm of the rocking chair. "Still as smooth as ever," he whispered. "The wood remembers kind hands," Elias replied. Thomas nodded. "I believe it does." By now, the room held 4 comfortable chairs gathered around the fireplace. The fire crackled softly. Steam curled upward from the teapot. Snow continued drifting beyond the windows. No one seemed aware of the passing minutes. Elias poured tea into simple white ceramic cups. Chamomile for Mrs. Brooks. Peppermint for Samuel. Black tea with a little honey for Thomas. His own familiar cup rested quietly beside him. The tea carried gentle clouds of fragrant steam through the warm room. Outside, the winter afternoons slowly settled into shades of silver. Inside, golden firelight danced softly across the bookshelves. Samuel looked thoughtfully into the flames. "I remember a winter," he said after a comfortable silence, "when the railroad disappeared beneath snow for nearly a week." Thomas smiled. The trains waited. They did, and no one seemed troubled by it. Samuel chuckled quietly. We simply brewed more coffee and waited for the weather to finish its work. The room grew peaceful again. No one hurried to tell another story. The silence between memories felt just as valuable as the memories themselves. Mrs. Brooks picked up one of the oatmeal cookies. "It always seemed," she said softly, "that snow gave everyone permission to slow down." "It still does," answered Elias. She nodded. "Perhaps that's why I enjoy winter so much." Thomas gazed toward the window, where delicate snowflakes continued their graceful journey. "When I was a boy," he said quietly, "my father would place a chair beside our fireplace every evening." Elias listened. He rarely spoke very much. Thomas smiled gently. But every night, he would read one chapter from whichever book happened to be on the table. "What did he like to read?" asked Mrs. Brooks. "Oh, history mostly." Thomas laughed softly. "Though I suspect I remember the warmth of the room more clearly than the stories themselves." Everyone smiled. Sometimes memories belonged less to words than to feelings. Warm blankets, soft light, the smell of tea, the comforting presence of family gathered nearby. Outside, a pair of snow-covered branches swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. The cardinals returned to the bird feeder. Their bright feathers looked almost like tiny red ornaments resting against the white landscape. Elias rose quietly from his chair. He added another log to the fire. The flames welcomed it with a gentle crackle. Then he returned with the cookie tin and offered it around the circle once more. No one took more than one. There was no reason. Simple things seemed richer when enjoyed slowly. The conversation drifted naturally from one quiet memory to another. Old apple harvests, summer picnics beside Willow Creek, evenings spent repairing fishing nets, the first electric street lamp in the village, the old covered bridge before it was repainted. None of the stories were dramatic, none needed to be. Each one reflected an ordinary life lived with quiet gratitude. The light outside gradually faded. Blue twilight settled gently over the snowy gardens. The library windows reflected the warm firelight more brightly now than the landscape beyond. Inside, the room felt wonderfully sheltered. The grandfather clock quietly announced another passing hour. Tick, pause, tick, pause. No one reached for a pocket watch. No one spoke about needing to leave. For a little while longer, the world beyond the library could wait. Eventually, Samuel stood first. He buttoned his heavy coat, wrapped his scarf carefully around his neck. "Thank you for the tea." "It was good to see you," Elias replied. Mrs. Brooks gathered her empty tin, though Elias quietly slipped 2 remaining cookies inside before closing the lid. She noticed. She smiled, but said nothing. Thomas placed one gentle hand upon the smooth wooden mantel before leaving. "See you next Thursday. I'll keep the fire ready." One by one, the familiar visitors stepped quietly into the snowy evening. Their footprints disappeared slowly beneath another light fall of snow. Soon the library grew still once again. Only Elias remained beside the fire. He looked around the little reading room. The empty chairs formed a peaceful circle around the glowing hearth. Warm tea still rested in his cup. The last embers glowed softly beneath the oak logs. Outside, snow continued falling without hurry. Inside, the warmth of quiet conversation lingered long after the voices had faded. Elias often believed that books were not the only stories kept safely inside the library. Some stories lived in old friends, some lived in shared silences, and some, perhaps the gentlest of all, lived beside a winter fireplace on slow Thursday afternoons in the peaceful village of Willow Creek. As evening settled over the snow-covered town, the library held those quiet memories close, just as faithfully as it held every treasured book upon its shelves.
Winter did not leave Willow Creek all at once. Like an old friend lingering at the front gate after a pleasant visit, it departed slowly, one quiet day at a time. The deep snowbanks beside the library steps grew a little smaller each afternoon. Icicles that had hung beneath the roof for many peaceful weeks released tiny drops of water into the warming air. Drip, pause, drip, pause. Even the sounds of the village had begun to change. Instead of the muffled silence that snow had carried through the long winter, Willow Creek slowly welcomed familiar voices once again. The cheerful chirping of robins, the distant creak of wagon wheels rolling over dry roads, the soft rustling of branches awakening in the warming breeze. Every sound seemed to say the same quiet thing: spring is returning. As always, Elias Turner arrived at the library before sunrise.
The morning air still carried a pleasant chill, but it no longer stung his cheeks as winter had done only a few weeks before. His heavy wool coat remained safely at home. Today, a lighter jacket was enough. The eastern sky glowed with delicate shades of lavender, peach, and pale gold. A thin mist rested above Willow Creek itself, drifting lazily over the quiet stream beyond the village. The old library stood peacefully beneath the brightening sky. Its brick walls looked warmer somehow beneath the returning sunlight. The carved wooden sign above the entrance gently swayed in the morning breeze. Elias unlocked the familiar oak door. The brass key turned with its comforting click. Inside, the library greeted him with its faithful stillness. The scent remained wonderfully familiar. Old paper, oak shelves, leather bindings, a faint memory of cedar from the winter firewood. Yet something had changed. The air itself felt lighter. The building no longer carried the deep warmth of constant winter fires. Instead, fresh spring air seemed eager to wander through every room. Elias smiled. It was time to welcome the season properly. He crossed to the eastern windows and slowly unlatched each one. Cool spring air drifted gently inside. It carried the scent of damp earth, fresh grass, blooming violets, and somewhere beyond the village, flowering apple trees. The curtains lifted ever so slightly. The library seemed to breathe deeply after its long winter rest. Outside the windows, the garden had quietly begun its yearly transformation. The rose bushes still appeared sleepy, but tiny green buds decorated nearly every branch. Small shoots of daffodils pushed bravely through the soft earth. Near the old stone pathway, clusters of crocuses displayed cheerful blossoms in shades of lavender, white, and golden yellow. Elias stepped outside carrying a small watering can. Not because the flowers needed much attention. Spring rains had been generous. He simply enjoyed greeting the garden each morning. The soil felt cool beneath his boots. Birdsong filled the crisp morning air. A robin landed confidently upon the edge of the bird feeder where cardinals had gathered all winter. It tilted its head as if recognizing the familiar librarian. Elias chuckled softly. "Good morning." The robin answered with a cheerful song before flying toward the maple tree beside the library. Nearby, two squirrels chased one another playfully around the trunk before disappearing into the fresh green branches above. Nature had become wonderfully busy again, yet nothing appeared rushed. Everything unfolded with patient confidence. Returning indoors, Elias placed the watering can beside the back door. Then he walked slowly through each room, opening several windows to invite the gentle breeze inside. Fresh air moved quietly between the shelves. Dust seemed to sparkle differently in the spring sunlight. The books themselves appeared brighter somehow, as though they too enjoyed the changing season. The little reading room looked especially beautiful. Morning light poured through the tall windows, warming the old rocking chair beside the fireplace. The fire had not been lit today. Instead, a large vase filled with fresh branches of flowering dogwood rested upon the mantel. Their delicate white blossoms reflected softly in the window glass. The room felt peaceful in a different way now, not wrapped in cozy winter warmth, but filled with quiet freshness. Elias opened the small cabinet beside the window. Inside rested lightweight cotton blankets that had been folded away before winter. He shook each one gently before placing them neatly across the backs of the reading chairs. The thick wool blankets returned to their cedar chest until colder days came once again. Seasons, he believed, deserved small ceremonies. Simple changes reminded everyone that time continued gently forward. By mid-morning, the first visitors arrived. Mrs. Eleanor Brooks paused in the garden before entering. She admired the crocuses for a few peaceful moments. "They've returned," she whispered. "They always do," Elias replied warmly. She smiled. "I think that's one of spring's nicest promises." Inside, she selected a collection of poetry celebrating gardens and wildflowers. The colorful illustrations seemed perfectly suited to the season. A little later, Benjamin arrived, carrying his notebook beneath one arm. He hurried only as much as an excited 12-year-old could manage. "Mr. Turner," he said softly, "I heard bluebirds near the creek this morning." Elias nodded. "I believe they'll soon be building nests again." Benjamin smiled. "I'd like to write about them. I'm sure they'll give you plenty to observe." Together, they walked quietly toward the nature section. Elias selected a beautifully illustrated bird guide from the shelf. Benjamin accepted it carefully. "I'll bring it back next week." "I know you will." The young boy settled beside the eastern window where sunlight warmed the reading table. He opened both his notebook and the bird guide. Outside, a bluebird landed upon the garden fence as though offering the perfect beginning for the day's writing. The afternoon unfolded with gentle simplicity. Windows remained open. The breeze carried the fragrance of fresh blossoms through every room. Visitors paused longer than usual beside the garden. Several borrowed books about flowers, birds, and country walks. Even the grandfather clock seemed somehow lighter as it passed the hours. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Late in the afternoon, Elias stepped onto the library porch. The village glowed beneath the warm spring sun. Children skipped along the sidewalks carrying little bouquets of wildflowers. A farmer guided his horse through freshly turned fields beyond the edge of town. Laundry fluttered peacefully behind several cottages. The creek sparkled beneath the sunlight, carrying melted snow gently toward distant rivers. The seasons had turned once again. Winter had offered stillness. Now spring offered quiet renewal. Neither season had been better than the other. Each had simply brought its own gentle gifts. Elias rested one hand upon the smooth wooden porch railing. A soft breeze moved through the maple branches overhead. Tiny new leaves shimmered in the golden light. He closed his eyes for just a moment and listened. Birdsong, flowing water, rustling branches, distant laughter, the slow heartbeat of Willow Creek. Opening his eyes again, he smiled. The old library had welcomed another spring. Its books remained faithful. Its shelves stood patiently. Its windows reflected a season filled with fresh beginnings. And just beyond those windows, the village continued its quiet rhythm, proving once again that life, like the turning pages of a favorite book, always found a gentle way to begin another beautiful chapter. Spring settled gently over Willow Creek. The mornings grew warmer with each passing week. Fresh green leaves shaded the quiet streets, and the library garden had awakened into full bloom. White daisies nodded in the breeze. Lavender released its calming fragrance whenever the wind wandered through the flower beds. Bees moved lazily from blossom to blossom, never seeming to hurry. Inside Willow Creek Public Library, another peaceful morning had begun. Golden sunlight filtered through the tall eastern windows, painting long rectangles of light across the polished oak floor. The grandfather clock welcomed another day with its familiar rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Elias Turner stood quietly beside the return desk. A neat stack of books waited for his attention. Most simply needed to be returned to their shelves, but a few had grown tired after many years of faithful service. A loose page, a cracked leather spine, a frayed cloth cover. Nothing serious, only gentle signs that they had been loved by countless readers. Elias smiled softly. Books, like people, carried their history proudly. He lifted the small stack carefully and carried it toward a room tucked quietly behind the main reading hall. Most visitors never entered this room. Above its narrow wooden door hung a modest brass plaque, Book Repair Workshop. The room was simple. A large oak workbench stood beneath a wide window overlooking the garden. Shelves held jars of linen thread, tiny brushes, smooth bone folders, and bottles of archival glue. Sheets of soft repair paper rested inside flat drawers. Rolls of cotton book cloth stood neatly arranged by color: cream, forest green, deep burgundy, navy blue. The room carried a unique fragrance: fresh paper, natural glue, leather, cedar wood, and the faint scent of spring flowers drifting through the open window.
It was one of Elias's favorite places in the entire library. Here, time seemed even slower. Every repair required patience. Every page deserved gentle hands. He placed the books carefully upon the workbench. The first was a collection of bedtime poems. Its cloth cover had faded from deep blue to soft gray after nearly 60 years of reading. One corner had begun to separate from the binding. Elias examined it closely through a small magnifying glass. He never rushed to fix a book. He preferred to understand exactly what it needed first, much like listening carefully before offering advice. He selected a narrow brush with soft bristles. A tiny amount of archival glue rested in a small porcelain dish. With slow, steady movements, he brushed a delicate line beneath the loose cloth. Not too much, only enough. He pressed the cover gently into place, then wrapped the book carefully between smooth wooden boards held together by soft cotton straps. It would rest there quietly until tomorrow.
Healing, Elias often thought, sometimes required nothing more than time and gentle support. Next came an old gardening journal. Several pages near the middle had worked themselves loose after many years of turning. The paper had yellowed beautifully with age. Tiny pressed flowers still rested between some of the pages. Elias smiled when he discovered a perfectly preserved daisy tucked beside a chapter about spring planting. He carefully lifted the flower, placed it between protective sheets, then returned his attention to the binding. Using a slender linen thread, he patiently stitched the loose pages back into place. Each stitch was small, even, almost invisible. The work reminded him of quilting or repairing a favorite coat. Simple care could give something many more years of useful life. Outside the open window, birds filled the garden with cheerful songs. A robin landed beside the bird bath. Nearby, a butterfly floated slowly among the blooming lavender. The breeze carried their quiet world gently into the workshop. Elias paused for a moment, not because he was tired, simply because the morning itself deserved appreciation. He looked toward the garden. Sunlight sparkled upon fresh leaves. A squirrel balanced carefully along the stone wall before disappearing beneath the old maple tree. Spring had settled comfortably into every corner of Willow Creek. Returning to his work, Elias opened another book. This one was older than most, a beautifully illustrated collection of American folk tales. Its leather spine carried fine cracks like tiny rivers crossing an old map. The pages remained strong. Only the cover needed attention. From one of the shelves, Elias selected a small piece of soft brown leather. Its color matched the original almost perfectly. He trimmed it carefully with a sharp little knife. Not hurriedly, each movement was thoughtful. When the patch was ready, he brushed a whisper-thin layer of adhesive across its back and gently pressed it over the worn section. His fingertips smoothed the leather until it rested naturally against the old binding. The repair did not hide the book's age, it honored it. The book still looked old, only stronger, only ready for many more quiet afternoons in someone's hands. Near midday, a soft knock came at the workshop door. Benjamin stood there, holding a thin notebook beneath one arm. "May I come in, Mr. Turner?" "Of course." The boy stepped inside carefully, as though entering a place of quiet importance. His eyes wandered across the workbench. "So this is where you fix the books?" Elias nodded. "They've taken care of readers for many years." He smiled gently. "Now it's my turn to take care of them." Benjamin looked thoughtfully at the books resting beneath wooden presses. "Does it take a long time?" "Sometimes." "Do you ever get impatient?" Elias chuckled softly. "The books have already waited many years."
He looked toward the window, where sunlight danced across the garden. "I don't think they mind waiting one day more." Benjamin smiled. "I like that." For several quiet minutes, the boy watched as Elias repaired another loose page. Neither spoke. The workshop itself seemed to encourage silence. Eventually, Benjamin asked, "Can anyone learn this?" "I believe so, as long as they enjoy careful work and don't mind going slowly." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "I think I'd like to learn someday." "I hope you do." Before leaving, Benjamin gently touched the edge of one repaired book. "I'll be careful when I borrow them. I know you will." The workshop grew peaceful again after the boy quietly closed the door. The afternoon sunlight shifted across the workbench.
One repaired book after another rested beneath gentle presses. Their pages lay straight once more. Their bindings felt secure. Their covers looked ready for many more years of reading. By late afternoon, Elias carried the completed books back into the main library. He placed each one carefully upon a small cart. Tomorrow they would return to their familiar shelves. Another reader would discover them. Another quiet afternoon would unfold. Most people would never notice the tiny repairs, nor did they need to. The books themselves would simply continue doing what they had always done, offering comfort, sharing stories, keeping company during rainy afternoons, snowy mornings, and peaceful evenings. As the golden light of spring settled across the library, Elias looked once more at the little repair workshop through its open doorway. It had been an ordinary day. No remarkable events, no great discoveries. Only quiet work, done with patient hands. Sometimes, he believed, the gentlest kind of love was not found in grand gestures. Sometimes it was found in repairing what had become worn, in caring for what others might overlook, in helping something beautiful continue its quiet journey. The grandfather clock marked another peaceful hour. Tick, pause. Tick, pause. Outside, the garden glowed beneath the warm afternoon sun. Inside, the old books rested comfortably upon their shelves once more, ready to accompany another generation of readers through the calm and gentle seasons of Willow Creek. The gentle warmth of spring remained over Willow Creek as another peaceful afternoon slowly drifted toward evening. The library had enjoyed a quiet day.
Books had found new readers. Readers had found comfortable chairs. Children had whispered softly as they turned the pages of picture books. Older visitors had lingered beside the tall windows with novels resting peacefully upon their laps. Now the day itself seemed ready to settle into silence. The sunlight had begun its slow journey toward the western hills. Its bright afternoon glow softened into rich shades of amber and gold. Outside the library, the maple trees welcomed the evening breeze. Fresh green leaves moved with the quietest whisper. Their shadows stretched longer across the stone pathway leading to the front porch. The flower garden rested peacefully after a day filled with bees and butterflies. White daisies gently nodded beneath the fading light. The lavender released its familiar fragrance into the cooling air. A pair of robins searched the grass for one last meal before returning to their nest. Inside the library, everything felt wonderfully still.
The grandfather clock continued its calm and faithful rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Elias Turner stood near the circulation desk, carefully returning the last borrowed books to their proper places. He never hurried this task. Every volume rested comfortably in his hands for a brief moment before returning to its familiar shelf. Some books had traveled only a few streets away. Others had spent several peaceful weeks beside someone's favorite chair or bedside table. Now they were home again. Elias often thought that libraries and readers shared a quiet understanding. Books never truly belonged to one place. They simply visited many homes before returning to rest among their companions. He smiled gently as he placed a worn collection of American poems back into its place. Its cloth cover had faded with age. The corners had softened from years of careful reading. Only yesterday he had repaired its binding in the workshop. Now it looked ready for many more quiet seasons. A gentle breeze entered through the open windows. The thin white curtains lifted slowly before settling once more.
The scent of lilacs drifted inside. Mixed with old paper and polished oak, it created the familiar fragrance that made the library feel unlike any other building in Willow Creek. As the afternoon continued, the sunlight gradually changed. Instead of pouring directly through the eastern windows, it now entered through the tall stained glass window above the spiral staircase. The window had watched over the library for generations. Its handcrafted glass depicted a peaceful woodland, towering oak trees, a winding stream, bluebirds resting upon flowering branches, and above them all, a rising sun spreading gentle rays across the forest. Years of afternoon sunlight had transformed that window into something almost magical. As the golden light passed through the colored glass, it painted the library with quiet colors. Soft amber stretched across the wooden floor. Gentle shades of blue rested upon the nearest bookshelf. Tiny patches of green shimmered across the reading tables. Crimson reflections drifted slowly along the staircase railing. Every evening, the library became a different painting. No two sunsets ever created exactly the same pattern. Elias paused beside the staircase.
He had seen this beautiful light hundreds of times, perhaps even thousands. Yet he never grew accustomed to it. Beauty, he believed, remained beautiful precisely because one stopped to notice it. He rested one hand upon the smooth oak railing. The colored light warmed the sleeve of his tweed jacket. For several moments, he simply watched. Dust floated gently through the beams of light. Each tiny particle glimmered briefly before disappearing again. They reminded him of tiny stars drifting quietly through a peaceful sky. No sound disturbed the room except the steady ticking of the clock and the occasional turning of a page from somewhere deeper inside the library. Mrs. Eleanor Brooks still sat near the western window. A book of poetry rested comfortably in her lap. She had not turned a page for several minutes. Instead, she watched the changing colors spread across the floor. Without looking away, she spoke softly. "The window seems especially beautiful today." Elias smiled. "I was thinking the very same thing. It changes every evening." "It does. And somehow it is always familiar."
He nodded gently, just like the seasons. Mrs. Brooks closed her book. Or old friends. Their conversation ended there. Not because anything more needed to be said. Some thoughts became complete after only a few quiet words. The room settled once again into peaceful silence. Outside, the western sky slowly deepened from gold into soft orange. The church bell echoed gently across the village. Its distant notes floated through the open windows before fading into the evening air. A few swallows circled high above the rooftops. Soon they would disappear beneath the eaves where they built their nests each spring. The light inside the library continued its slow journey across the floor. Amber became copper. Blue deepened toward violet. The crimson reflections softened until they resembled rose petals scattered upon polished wood. The colors moved so gradually that only someone sitting quietly could notice them. Elias believed that many of life's finest moments happened exactly that way. Too slowly for hurried eyes, perfectly for patient ones.
He walked toward the little reading room. There, the evening light reached through another stained glass panel above the fireplace. Its simple design showed climbing ivy wrapped around an open book. The colored light settled gently upon the old rocking chair where countless readers had spent peaceful afternoons. The chair stood empty now, waiting patiently for tomorrow. Beside it, the cotton blanket remained neatly folded across its back. The room carried the warmth of many conversations, many quiet readings, and many thoughtful afternoons. Even in silence, it felt wonderfully alive. Outside, the breeze grew a little cooler. Fresh leaves whispered against the windows. Somewhere beyond the garden, a mockingbird began its evening song. Its gentle melodies drifted across Willow Creek without hurry. Elias opened the front door for a moment and stepped onto the porch. The sun now rested just above the distant hills. Golden light covered the rooftops of the village. The creek shimmered like polished glass. Smoke rose lazily from a few chimneys where evening meals were beginning to cook. The whole village appeared wrapped in calm. Returning inside, he walked toward the little reading room. There, the evening light reached through another stained glass panel above the fireplace. Its simple design showed climbing ivy wrapped around an open book. The colored light settled gently upon the old rocking chair where countless readers had spent peaceful afternoons. The chair stood empty now, waiting patiently for tomorrow. Beside it, the cotton blanket remained neatly folded across its back. The room carried the warmth of many conversations, many quiet readings, and many thoughtful afternoons. Even in silence, it felt wonderfully alive. Outside, the breeze grew a little cooler. Fresh leaves whispered against the windows. Somewhere beyond the garden, a mockingbird began its evening song. Its gentle melodies drifted across Willow Creek without hurry. Elias opened the front door for a moment and stepped onto the porch. The sun now rested just above the distant hills. Golden light covered the rooftops of the village. The creek shimmered like polished glass. Smoke rose lazily from a few chimneys where evening meals were beginning to cook. The whole village appeared wrapped in calm. Returning inside, he paused one last time beneath the stained glass window. The colors had begun to fade. Soon, the floor would return to its familiar shades of oak. Tomorrow evening, the light would return once again. Never exactly the same, always quietly beautiful. Elias looked around the library with quiet gratitude. Books upon their shelves, comfortable chairs beside open windows, the scent of spring flowers drifting through gentle air, and above it all, evening light shining patiently through colored glass. He smiled softly. Some people traveled across great distances searching for beautiful places. Elias had discovered one many years ago. It stood quietly in the center of Willow Creek, and every evening, as sunlight passed gently through its old stained glass windows, it reminded anyone willing to pause that even an ordinary day could end with extraordinary peace. The colored light slowly faded as the sun slipped beyond the hills. Twilight quietly approached, and the library waited peacefully for the final visitor of the day.
The last colors of sunset lingered gently above Willow Creek. Golden light slowly softened into warm shades of rose and lavender, spreading quietly across the western sky. The village seemed to breathe more slowly as evening settled over the familiar streets. The library stood peacefully at the center of it all. Its tall windows still reflected the fading light. The stained glass panel above the staircase had grown quieter now. The brilliant amber and crimson colors of a few moments ago had become soft shadows resting upon the polished oak floor. Inside, everything remained wonderfully calm. The grandfather clock continued its faithful rhythm. Tick, pause, tick, pause. Elias Turner walked slowly between the bookshelves, making no sound except the gentle footsteps of polished leather shoes upon old wooden boards. Every shelf appeared neat. Every chair rested comfortably in its place. The scent of old books mingled with the cool fragrance of the evening breeze drifting through the slightly open windows. There was no hurry.
There never seemed to be a reason for hurrying inside Willow Creek Public Library. Outside, the evening birds had begun their final songs of the day. A robin called softly from the maple tree beside the garden. Farther away, a mourning dove answered with its peaceful, familiar coo. The sounds blended naturally into the quiet rhythm of the village. Elias glanced toward the grandfather clock. Only a little while remained before closing time. Most evenings, the library emptied long before sunset. Visitors understood the gentle routine. Books were chosen, pages were enjoyed, conversations were shared quietly. Then, everyone returned home as daylight slowly faded. This evening seemed no different, or so it appeared. Just then, the small brass bell above the front door gave a soft, cheerful ring. Not loud, only enough to announce that someone had entered. Elias looked toward the entrance. Standing just inside the doorway was a familiar face, Miss Abigail Carter. She was one of the oldest residents of Willow Creek. Her silver hair rested neatly beneath a small straw hat decorated with a simple blue ribbon. A light gray cardigan covered her shoulders despite the pleasant spring evening. In one hand, she carried a well-loved canvas book bag. In the other rested a single hardcover book.
She smiled warmly. "I hope I'm not too late." Elias returned her smile. "Not at all, Miss Carter. The library still has plenty of time for one more visitor." She stepped inside slowly, closing the door gently behind her. The evening breeze slipped in with her for only a moment before the library returned to its peaceful stillness. "I've finished this one," she said, lifting the book carefully. It was lovely. Elias accepted it with both hands. The cover showed a quiet farmhouse surrounded by apple trees. "I wondered if you would enjoy it." "I did." She laughed softly. "It made me remember my grandmother's porch." Elias opened the front cover for a brief moment. The borrowing card showed only a handful of names. Miss Carter's careful handwriting now joined them. Another quiet reader added to the book's gentle history. She looked toward the fiction shelves. "I thought perhaps one more story before tomorrow." "I believe the shelves have been waiting for you." Miss Carter smiled again. "I suspect they always are." Together, they walked slowly toward the section containing classic American novels. The evening light reached only faintly into this corner now. Small reading lamps cast warm circles of golden light across the shelves. The room felt even cozier than before. Books rested quietly in neat rows. Some appeared nearly new. Others carried softened corners and faded cloth bindings from many years of careful reading. Miss Carter moved slowly along the shelves. She never searched quickly. Instead, she allowed each title to greet her in its own time. Her fingertips brushed lightly across familiar spines. Occasionally, she paused, tilted her head, read a title once more, then continued. Watching her, Elias thought that choosing a book resembled greeting an old friend.
one never hurried such meetings. Finally, she stopped before a modest green volume. Its title was stamped in fading gold letters, "The Orchard Beyond the Hill." She lifted it gently from the shelf. "I borrowed this many years ago." Elias nodded. "I remember. My husband read it first." Her smile became softer. "We used to take turns reading a chapter each evening." She held the book quietly for a moment, not with sadness, only with gratitude. "Perhaps," she whispered, "I'll visit those pages again. I think they'd be happy to welcome you back." Together, they returned to the front desk. Elias opened the book carefully. The pages carried the familiar scent of paper that had quietly aged through decades of peaceful reading. He stamped the due date onto the borrowing card with a soft click. The sound echoed gently through the nearly empty library. Miss Carter slipped the book into her canvas bag. Before leaving, she looked around the reading room. The evening lamps glowed warmly. The flowers upon the front desk still reflected the final traces of daylight. The grandfather clock continued faithfully. Tick, pause, tick, pause. "It feels different in the evening," she said quietly. "It does. Almost as though the library grows sleepy." Elias smiled. "I've often thought the same." She laughed gently. "Then I'd better let it rest." He walked with her to the front door. Outside, twilight had settled gently across Willow Creek. The first evening star shone above the western hills. The air carried the pleasant fragrance of lilacs and freshly cut grass. Miss Carter stepped carefully onto the porch. She adjusted the strap of her canvas bag. "Thank you, Elias. It was a pleasure to see you. I'll return next week. I'll be looking forward to it." She waved softly before beginning her slow walk toward home. Her footsteps followed the stone path through the quiet garden. The book rested safely inside her bag, not simply borrowed, accompanied. Elias watched until she disappeared around the corner beside the old maple tree. The evening seemed even quieter afterward. He remained standing on the porch for another peaceful moment. The sky above Willow Creek deepened into shades of blue. A gentle breeze moved through the fresh spring leaves. The village settled naturally into its evening rhythm. Returning inside, Elias closed the front door carefully. The little brass bell gave one final delicate ring. Its cheerful note faded slowly into silence. The library was once again empty. Books rested peacefully upon their shelves. Comfortable chairs waited beside quiet windows. The day's final visitor had carried one more story home. And now, as dusk settled gently beyond the glass, the old library prepared for another calm evening of rest. Soon it would be time for Elias to make his familiar walk through every room before closing the wooden doors for the night. Twilight settled gently over Willow Creek. The last traces of daylight faded beyond the western hills,
leaving the village wrapped in soft shades of blue and silver. One by one, warm lights appeared in cottage windows, glowing quietly against the calm evening. Inside the library, the silence grew even deeper. The final visitor had returned home. The little brass bell above the front door had long since become still. Only the steady heartbeat of the grandfather clock remained. Tick, pause. Tick, pause. Elias Turner stood quietly behind the circulation desk for a moment. This was always one of his favorite times of day. The library belonged to no one now. Not to visitors, not to readers, not even to him. It simply rested in peaceful silence, gathering its thoughts after another gentle day. He took a slow breath. The familiar scent of old paper, polished oak, and spring air filled the room. Outside, a cool evening breeze stirred the maple leaves. Their soft rustling drifted through the slightly open windows. It was time for the evening routine. Just as every sunrise had its own quiet rhythm, every closing carried its own gentle ceremony. Elias picked up a small brass lantern from beneath the front desk. Although electric lights softly illuminated the library, he still carried the lantern each evening. Not because it was needed, simply because it had become a comforting tradition, one that belonged to the librarians before him. Its warm amber glow felt friendly, almost like carrying a small piece of sunset through the quiet rooms. He lit the lantern with a single wooden match. A tiny flame flickered gently before settling into a steady golden light. Holding it comfortably in one hand, Elias began his slow walk through the library. His footsteps were soft upon the old wooden floor. Each familiar creak sounded like a quiet greeting from the building itself. He started in the history room. Tall shelves stood in perfect order. Leather-bound atlases rested beside local history journals. Old newspapers, carefully bound into thick volumes, waited patiently upon their shelves. Everything appeared exactly as it should. Elias ran one hand lightly across the edge of a polished bookshelf. The wood felt smooth beneath his fingertips. Many hands had cared for these shelves over the decades. Tonight, they rested peacefully once again. The colorful picture books had all returned to their places. Small wooden chairs formed a neat circle beneath the storytelling quilt. A hand-carved rocking horse stood quietly beside the window, waiting for another story hour. On a nearby shelf rested a little stuffed rabbit, its long ears gently folded. Someone had carefully placed it there before leaving. Elias smiled. It looked perfectly comfortable. He decided not to move it. Some things seemed happiest exactly where they had been left. The lantern's warm light followed him into the little reading room. Even without a fire, the room felt wonderfully inviting. The old stone fireplace carried the memory of many winter afternoons. The rocking chair rested beside it, facing the tall windows. Outside, the garden had begun to disappear into the soft blue light of evening. The roses were only gentle shapes now. The lavender swayed quietly in the breeze. Beyond them, the maple tree stood peacefully against the darkening sky. Elias paused for a moment. He placed one hand upon the back of the rocking chair. Its polished wood had grown silky smooth after many years of quiet use. He imagined the countless readers who had rested there, some reading novels, some simply watching rain upon the windows, others enjoying nothing more than silence and a warm cup of tea. The chairs seemed to remember them all. He gently straightened the folded blanket draped across its back. Perfect. Exactly as tomorrow's first visitor would find it. Continuing his evening walk, Elias climbed the spiral staircase. The lantern cast soft circles of light upon each wooden step. The stained glass window beside the staircase had grown dark now. Without the sunlight, its colorful patterns rested quietly until another evening would awaken them again. At the top gallery, moonlight slipped through a narrow dormer window. Its cool silver glow rested across the highest bookshelves. The contrast between the lantern's warm amber light and the moon's gentle silver created a peaceful harmony, warmth and coolness, day and night, ending and beginning. Elias moved slowly along the upper shelves. The forgotten atlas remained safely in its place. Travel journals waited beside collections of poetry. Family histories rested beside weathered encyclopedias. Every book seemed content. No voices, no movement, only quiet companionship. He whispered softly, almost without realizing it, "Sleep well." The words drifted gently into the stillness. Perhaps they were meant for the books, perhaps for the library itself, or perhaps simply for the peaceful day that had now come to its close. Descending the staircase once more, Elias stopped beside each window. One by one, he closed them carefully. The evening breeze slipped gently through the narrow opening before the latch clicked softly into place. Click, pause, click, pause. Soon every room held only the calm air of the library itself. Outside sounds became quieter. The world seemed farther away. Next came the lamps. Elias never turned them off all at once. He preferred to dim the building gradually. The reading lamps in the history room grew dark first. Then the lights above the reference shelves. Next, the children's corner. Finally, only the entrance hall remained softly illuminated. The growing shadows never felt lonely. Instead, they felt peaceful, like blankets gently settling over familiar furniture at the end of a long day. The grandfather clock quietly announced another passing hour. Its gentle chime echoed through every room before fading into silence. Elias returned the lantern to its place beneath the front desk. Its small flame had served its evening purpose. With a careful breath, he extinguished it. A thin ribbon of smoke curled upward for a brief moment before disappearing into the still air. Only the entrance light remained. He reached for his coat, hanging beside the oak door. The tweed fabric felt pleasantly cool after the warmth of the library. He slipped it on slowly, adjusted the collar, placed the brass keys into his pocket. Then he turned once more to face the quiet building. Rows of books rested beneath soft shadows. The polished floor reflected the final glow of the entrance lamp. The library seemed completely at peace, satisfied with another gentle day.
Elias smiled with quiet gratitude.
Every evening, this simple ritual reminded him that caring for a library was never only about books. It was about preparing a place where tomorrow's readers would once again find comfort, kindness, and calm. He reached for the great oak door. Its polished brass handle felt familiar in his hand. With slow, careful movement, he pulled it closed. The heavy wood swung inward without haste. The old hinges answered with their gentle, familiar whisper. Then came the soft, comforting sound that marked the end of another beautiful day. Click. The wooden doors were closed. The library rested safely behind them. Outside, the evening had fully arrived. Ahead of Elias stretched the quiet streets of Willow Creek, beneath a sky where the first bright stars were beginning to appear. He adjusted his coat against the cool spring air and stepped gently onto the stone path, ready for his peaceful walk home beneath the night sky.
The library doors rested peacefully behind Elias Turner. Their old oak panels reflected the gentle glow of the lantern hanging above the entrance. The brass handle, polished by many years of careful hands, caught the last hint of evening light before surrendering to the quiet blue of night. For a moment, Elias remained standing on the front steps. He looked back at the library. Its windows were dark now, yet they never seemed empty. Behind those walls waited thousands of stories, adventure and history, poetry and quiet reflection, childhood memories tucked inside picture books, forgotten letters resting between worn pages. Every book now slept peacefully upon its shelf, waiting patiently for tomorrow's first reader. The village around him had also begun its evening rest. Warm yellow light glowed behind lace curtains. Some families were finishing supper. Others had already settled into comfortable chairs beside small fireplaces. From one nearby porch came the gentle creak of an old rocking chair. Someone hummed a quiet melody that drifted softly through the spring air before fading into the stillness. Elias smiled.
Willow Creek never felt silent. It simply spoke very gently. He adjusted the collar of his tweed jacket and began his familiar walk home. His footsteps followed the narrow stone pathway leading away from the library garden. Each stone had been worn smooth by decades of quiet travelers, children carrying library books, teachers walking home after school, farmers stopping by on rainy afternoons, visitors who had become neighbors, neighbors who had become lifelong friends. Tonight, only Elias walked the path. His footsteps made the softest sound against the stones. Step, pause, step, pause. The evening breeze carried the sweet fragrance of lilacs mixed with the clean scent of fresh grass. Somewhere nearby, jasmine vines had begun to bloom, filling the cool air with a delicate perfume.
The flowers seemed brighter beneath the moonlight than they had beneath the afternoon sun. At the end of the garden path, Elias reached the little wooden bridge crossing Willow Creek. The stream moved quietly beneath it. Moonlight rested upon the gentle current like a long ribbon of silver silk. Tiny ripples carried the reflected stars downstream, stretching and reshaping them with every peaceful movement of the water. A small fish rose briefly beneath the surface. Tiny circles spread quietly across the water before disappearing again. The creek returned to perfect calm. Above him, the night sky continued growing deeper. More stars appeared one by one. First the brightest, then smaller ones, then countless tiny points of light until the heavens seemed gently dusted with silver. The Milky Way stretched faintly across the darkness. Elias had admired this sky for many years, yet every evening it felt wonderfully new.
He often imagined that every star was like one of the library's books. Alone, each one was beautiful. Together, they created something far greater, a peaceful collection stretching farther than anyone could ever count. A cool breeze moved gently through the maple branches overhead. Fresh leaves whispered softly together. Their quiet conversation blended with the slow murmur of the creek below. Then another familiar sound joined them: crickets. At first only one, then another. Soon the grassy fields beyond the village offered their gentle evening chorus, steady, calm, comforting. Far across the meadow, a tree frog answered with its own peaceful song. The sounds never competed. Each waited patiently for the others, like instruments in a quiet orchestra conducted by the night itself. Elias resumed his walk. The road curved gently past the white church. Its tall steeple pointed peacefully toward the star-filled sky. A small lantern glowed beside the wooden door, welcoming anyone who might pass. Beyond the church stood rows of modest cottages. Several windows remained softly lit.
One family gathered around a supper table. Another sat together on a front porch, speaking so quietly that only gentle laughter occasionally reached the road. A golden retriever lay sleeping beneath one porch swing. Its tail gave a lazy little wag as someone reached down to scratch behind its ears. The peaceful sights warmed Elias's heart. No one appeared hurried. No one seemed troubled. The village settled naturally into another quiet night. As he walked farther along the lane, the houses gradually became fewer. Open fields stretched gently beneath the moonlight. Young wheat moved softly in the breeze, creating long waves that shimmered beneath the stars. Beyond the fields stood the old red barn of the Miller family. A single lantern glowed inside. Perhaps someone was finishing the evening chores. Perhaps they were simply enjoying a few peaceful moments before heading home. Nearby, a weathered windmill turned slowly. Its wooden blades moved with such gentle grace that they seemed almost suspended in the night air. Creak. Pause. Creak. Pause. The familiar sound drifted across the fields. It had greeted generations of evening travelers. Tonight, it greeted Elias once again. He smiled quietly. Some sounds became part of a place. The grandfather clock in the library, the creek beneath the bridge, the windmill beyond the fields. Each one marked time in its own patient way. The road narrowed as it approached Elias's cottage. A white picket fence surrounded a small front garden, where roses and lavender rested peacefully beneath the moonlight. The porch lamp glowed warmly, casting a welcoming circle of light upon the stone steps. Before climbing them, Elias turned once more toward the sky. It was now completely filled with stars. Brilliant, quiet, endless. He took one slow, comfortable breath. The cool night air carried the scent of pine from the nearby forest. The crickets continued their gentle song. Far away, an owl called once from the hills before silence returned. Elias removed his hat for a moment. Not from habit, simply from gratitude, for another peaceful day, for familiar books, for kind neighbors, for quiet routines, for evenings that asked nothing except to be noticed. He placed his hat back upon his head, opened the little garden gate. Its latch clicked softly behind him. The flowers nodded gently in the breeze, as though wishing him good evening. Inside the cottage, a warm lamp waited beside his favorite chair. Tomorrow morning, before the first hint of sunrise, he would once again walk back to the library. The shelves would be waiting. The books would be waiting. The village would awaken slowly. But tonight, there was only the peaceful comfort of home beneath a sky full of quiet stars. And above Willow Creek, those faithful stars continued their silent watch, shining gently over the sleeping village until the first light of another beautiful morning would slowly appear. Night settled completely over Willow Creek. The final traces of twilight had long since faded beyond the distant mills, leaving the little village wrapped beneath a peaceful blanket of darkness. Above, countless stars shimmered softly across the wide American sky, while a slender crescent moon cast its gentle silver light upon rooftops, quiet gardens, and winding country roads. The village no longer hurried. Its work was finished. Its voices had grown quiet. Its homes rested peacefully beneath the calm embrace of night. At the center of Willow Creek stood the old library. Its brick walls glowed faintly beneath the porch lantern. The great oak doors remained safely closed. Behind them rested rows upon rows of patient books, each one waiting quietly for another day. The building itself seemed to breathe with slow contentment. Nothing stirred inside. Nothing needed to. The library had earned its rest. Beyond the front steps, the flower garden slept peacefully beneath the moonlight. The lavender swayed ever so gently whenever a cool breeze wandered through. The white daisies folded their delicate petals for the night. Tiny drops of dew began gathering upon the leaves, reflecting the stars like little pieces of crystal. The maple tree beside the library stood watch over the quiet building. Its young spring leaves whispered softly together. Their gentle rustling sounded almost like the turning of distant pages. Inside the library, moonlight slipped quietly through the tall windows. Without the warmth of the afternoon sun, the stained glass panels no longer painted the floor with rich colors. Instead, pale silver rested peacefully upon the polished oak boards. The reading tables wore quiet shadows. The comfortable chairs waited patiently. The little reading room remained exactly as Elias had left it. The rocking chair rested beside the fireplace. The folded cotton blanket lay neatly across its back. The vase of fresh flowers still stood upon the mantel, their blossoms faintly visible beneath the soft moonlight. The room carried the memory of many peaceful afternoons. Children listening to stories, neighbors sharing tea, readers turning gentle pages beside the fire. Tonight, those memories rested quietly with the books themselves. The grandfather clock continued faithfully through the night. Tick, pause. Tick, pause. Its slow rhythm echoed gently through every hallway. No one listened.
Yet, somehow, it felt important that the clock continued keeping time. Morning would arrive when it was ready. There was no need to hurry it. On the upper shelves, leather-bound histories rested beside collections of poetry. Picture books stood shoulder to shoulder with atlases. Cookbooks waited beside gardening journals. Every volume seemed perfectly at home. Some had traveled through many hands over the years. Others had only recently found their place upon the shelves. Each carried its own quiet journey. Each held countless moments of comfort waiting to be shared. Outside, Willow Creek flowed gently beneath the little wooden bridge. The water reflected the moon and stars as it made its slow journey through the sleeping valley. A tiny fish disturbed the surface for only a moment. The ripples widened quietly before disappearing once again. Along the grassy banks, crickets continued their steady evening chorus. Far beyond the village, an owl called once from the forest. Its gentle voice faded naturally into the peaceful silence. Nothing startled the night. Everything belonged. High above, soft clouds drifted slowly across the stars. Their movement was almost impossible to notice. Only someone watching patiently for many quiet minutes would see them gently changing shape. The same could be said of time itself. It rarely announced its passing. It simply moved gently forward, hour after hour, season after season, year after year. The library understood that rhythm well. It had welcomed spring blossoms, summer sunshine, autumn leaves, winter snowfall, again and again. Children had grown into parents. Parents had become grandparents. Books once read by young hands were now borrowed by those same readers many decades later. The building had quietly witnessed every season of life, never asking for attention, never demanding recognition, only offering a peaceful place where stories could be discovered and ordinary moments could become treasured memories. In his little cottage nearby, Elias Turner slept peacefully. His tweed jacket rested neatly upon its wooden hook. His polished shoes stood beside the front door. A favorite book lay closed upon the bedside table, a ribbon marking the place where tomorrow evening's reading would begin. Outside his bedroom window,
The same stars watched over him that watched over the library. The same cool breeze wandered through the maple trees. The same gentle silence filled the sleeping village. Tomorrow, before the first robin welcomed the dawn, before the bakery filled the air with the scent of fresh bread, before children hurried toward school with books tucked beneath their arms, before sunlight passed once again through the library's beautiful stained glass window, Elias would wake. He would brew a simple cup of tea. He would place the old brass key into his pocket, and he would walk the familiar path back to the library. He would unlock the heavy oak door. He would open the windows to welcome the fresh morning air. He would straighten the books, dust the shelves, smile at the birds in the garden, and greet another quiet day with the same gentle kindness he had offered every day before. The library would awaken slowly, just as it always had, just as it always would. But that moment had not yet arrived. For now, the village rested. The creek flowed softly beneath the bridge. The trees whispered in the night breeze. The stars shone faithfully overhead, and the old library, filled with thousands of peaceful stories, slept safely until morning. Perhaps, somewhere beyond these quiet shelves, another reader would soon discover a favorite book. Perhaps another child would hear a story for the first time. Perhaps another pressed flower would one day rest between familiar pages.
The library would be ready. It always was. Until then, let the night remain gentle. Let the stars keep their quiet watch. Let every page rest peacefully. Let every memory settle softly into silence. And as Willow Creek sleeps beneath its calm spring sky, may your own thoughts become just as quiet, your breathing just as slow, your heart just as peaceful, until, like the old library itself, you drift gently into a deep, comfortable sleep, waiting patiently for the soft light of another beautiful morning. Good night, Willow Creek. Good night, dear library. And good night to you.